August 25th. In Wisconsin, Democrats are choosing their nominee for governor in a contest highlighting divisions within the party. State Representative Francesca Hong and Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley are among the leading candidates. The Republican primary for governor is also on the ballot tonight. And in Minnesota, the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate features a closely watched contest between Representative Angie Craig and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who are competing to replace retiring Senator Tina Smith. Voters are also choosing party nominees for governor, the House, and statewide offices. Tonight, we'll bring you the results as they come in, with South Carolina closing right at the top of the hour, followed by results in Connecticut, Alabama, and Vermont in the coming hour. And the marquee matchups coming later tonight in Minnesota and Wisconsin when polls close at 9 p.m. Eastern. All the results, along with reporter analysis, candidate speeches, and as always, a conversation with all of you. This is Primary Night in America on C-SPAN, and welcome to our coverage. We want to keep all of you in part of the conversation as well, so here's how you can dial in. Democrats, 202-748-8920, Republicans, 202-748-8921, and Independents, 202-748-8922. And if you voted today, we want to hear from you at 202-748-8923. Joining us at the table this evening is Jessica Taylor, who's the state and governor's editor with the Cook Political Report, along with Abby Turner, who is National Journal's Hotline States and Governors correspondent. Ladies, let's just begin with the themes of the evening. Jessica Taylor, what are they?
This is another progressive versus moderate battle. We're seeing it in the Minnesota Senate primary, where you have the more progressive Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan running against the more centrist Congresswoman Angie Craig. Now, this doesn't have as many general election implications as last week's primary in Michigan did, because Minnesota is less competitive than Michigan. We currently rate this race as likely Democrat, but it's certainly one that we're watching. Republicans feel like they would have a better shot against Flanagan, not necessarily because of her ideology, but because she's been tied to the Walz administration and the widespread fraud that we saw there, that scandal. And then I think the one that has the biggest implications is in the Wisconsin governor's race, where you have a Democratic socialist in Francesca Hong that is state representative, that is the leading candidate. This primary has had twists and turns worthy of a soap opera. You had the moderate candidate that everyone was sort of coalescing behind, the lieutenant governor saw her campaign implode. The governor got a candidate that had previously dropped out, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, to get back in. You had the former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes that just dropped out a little over a week ago. So you've seen sort of the establishment try to get behind Crowley, but it feels like it's a little too late. It seems like Hong is going to be the winner there, and she could really put this seat in danger for Democrats because they have a very strong candidate in Congressman Tom Tiffany that's running some very smart ads, I think. And remember, Wisconsin is the quintessential swing state in the country, really.
Went for Trump in 2024.
Mm-hmm. So, but split for Senate for Tammy Baldwin. So we've seen these people are used to splitting their tickets, but will a Democratic socialist be sort of a step too far? Now Democrats are already hitting Tom Tiffany for his positions on abortion, for being too tied to D.C., for being an election denier. You're already seeing the ads starting to fly. But Hong has not had a good spate of media interviews recently. She's talked about, wanting to cancel Thanksgiving and has had to walk that back. They're bringing up her tweets that she's had on, wanting to defund the police and ICE. I think that this is Abdul al-Sayed last week. He's not a Democratic socialist. He's progressive. He's allied with Bernie Sanders, but she is a DSA candidate. Yeah,
and Abby Turner, left versus center. Here we go again. But she did not get the endorsement, Francesca Hong,
she did not,
of progressives like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Correct. I think there is a lot of 2028 at stake here. You look at someone like AOC, she's thinking ahead. So are national progressives. They want to tap candidates this cycle that are going to win. They don't want a losing candidate on that record in 2028. like Jessica said, there are a lot of negatives that can be run against Francesca Hong here, you know, canceling Thanksgiving, her stance on police, a lot of things that Republicans I talked to in Wisconsin are just kind of chomping at the bit to bring up if she is the nominee here. So I think national progressives are kind of waiting it out, but if she is the nominee and Democrats want to have a good chance at keeping the seat in hand, they're going to have to get involved, and it's going to have to be a big tent effort from the Democrats.
And then on the right, what are we looking at for Republicans tonight?
I think one thing that we are going to see tonight in South Carolina is how does Washington drag down candidates? We saw that in the gubernatorial primary. We had reps Norman and Mace did not advance into that runoff. Norman is running again tonight in that special primary. So is
Congressman Ralph Norman.
Yes. So is Representative Russell Fry. I think one of them is probably expected to make it here, but as we've seen time and time again this cycle, there's a lot of anti-Washington sentiment that has hit GOP primaries.
Jessica Taylor, other races where there are Republicans running, what are you watching for?
I agree with Abby. This South Carolina primary is fascinating to me because, none of us expected that Senator Graham, who was such a force in Washington, would pass away, and that then his sister was seen as a caretaker. She's a virtual unknown other than her last name. And Graham only got 57% of his primary just in June. So it's not like he's viewed with a lot of skepticism by the Republican base back home. And I think she is too. My Republican sources in South Carolina think that Graham, because of her name ID and because she has Trump's endorsement, is going to secure one of two spots in the runoff, and probably Ralph Norman, because he had spent $5 billion of his own money in that governor's race, already had raised his name ID, had won in places like the upstate. But you can't count out Russell Fry, who actually thought that he would be running with Trump's endorsement, was seen as Trump's pick initially before he decided to go with Graham. Former Governor Mark Sanford's also running, also certainly an interesting candidate. He certainly had his share of scandal and redemption and different things, so you sort of can't count him out either. I think this is going to be a really low turnout affair, and strange things can happen with that. But I think the only thing that we know is that we're going to a runoff, but I would probably rather be Graham and Norman at this point while, we're still waiting for the results to come in.
And then after the runoff, what does the general election look like? How is it rated?
We rate this as solid Republican. I think that Democrats have a credible candidate in pediatrician Annie Andrews. But her path forward in a general election was predicated on taking on Lindsey Graham. Maybe Darlene Graham, she's an untested candidate. She could make some missteps. This is one that we're still watching. She's raised about $4 million in the last quarter for this race. But I think that Democrats honestly have better reach states. When I look at the Senate map, we just shifted Kansas into likely Republican. Democrats are bullish on Mississippi. They're a little more bullish on Florida. If we're talking about states beyond, the traditional ones that we're looking at and beyond sort of Texas and Iowa, I think that there are just better places that they can spend their money than South Carolina.
All right. Abby Turner, in Republicans, focusing on tonight's races, beyond South Carolina, what are you watching for with these Republican candidates?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm watching for, again, as we're going to see in South Carolina, but also we're going to see in Minnesota tonight, is the power of Trump's endorsement. He has failed multiple times this cycle to get his picks across the line. In the Minnesota governor's race, he has tapped MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, notable for spreading election conspiracy theories in 2020. He's in I would say, virtually three-way primary for that Republican nomination. Trump went against the state party, who endorsed Kendall Qualls there. Also have State House Speaker Lisa Damoth running. So I'm really watching to see in South Carolina, more so in the runoff that we'll see with Darlene Graham, and then in Minnesota tonight, if Trump can get his picks across the line.
Jessica Taylor?
I think that we're looking at some key House races as well in the country. You have congressman in Connecticut looking that could lose his primary there as well. So, there's Minnesota 2nd District primary in Connecticut. That is John Larson. He's being challenged by Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin, who's been backed by vote vets and different things. So we're watching. We could see that. There's Alabama that's having to now, because they redistricted, now they are having primaries and different things. So I think, all eyes really are on Wisconsin and Minnesota, I think, here tonight, and South Carolina and what's going to happen there. I went to college in South Carolina and never It's never not a fascinating state when it comes to primaries.
What about counting the votes tonight? Do you think we're going to have any state that we're watching tonight where the votes are counted slowly, or are we going to have a close contest like we did last Tuesday in Michigan in that primary contest for the U.S. Senate seat on the Democratic side?
I think if anything's the closest tonight, it's going to be the Democratic primary for Senate in Minnesota. Now, we don't have a California tonight, so hopefully votes are counted faster than that. But I feel pretty confident that we'll have a very good picture, come 11 p.m. midnight tonight of where we stand in some of these contentious primaries.
As we said, in South Carolina, the polls have closed there for this special primary race to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham. President Trump recently endorsed his sister, Darlene Graham. Take a listen.
Hello, South Carolina, a very special place that I won every single time by a lot, in fact, by a record. There's a very important special election coming up in your state, and I'm asking you to all get out and vote for an incredible woman and a true champion for the people of South Carolina, Senator Darlene Graham. After the passing of her wonderful brother and my friend, the legendary Senator Lindsey Graham, I asked Darlene to run for the Senate because I know she has what it takes to be an outstanding representative for your state. Darlene has proven to be tough, smart, and strong, even in the few weeks since she became a senator. With your vote, Darlene will fight tirelessly to defend South Carolina jobs, raise your wages, protect your Second Amendment, keep men out of women's sports, and secure our elections by passing the Save America Act. And Darlene will always vote to defend our borders and keep illegal aliens out of our country. Darlene Graham has my complete and total endorsement, and I have no doubt she will make South Carolina very, very proud. She's a special person, just like her brother was a special person. Go vote for Senator Darlene Graham. You'll be saying in years from now, I'm glad I listened to the president. She's outstanding. Thank you very much.
President Trump with his endorsement for Darlene Graham last week on X. Joining us from South Carolina is Reuben Jones, who's a Spectrum News reporter there with the latest. So, Reuben Jones, let's just begin with turnout. What are we expecting in the Palmetto State?
Yeah, Greta, it's good to see you. I'm actually in D.C. tonight, but following South Carolina really closely. It's going to be interesting to see because, this race has garnered a lot of attention in the state. Obviously, with the president's endorsement, you have a lot of high-profile candidates mixed in here. The question is, it's been a very short runway for these candidates to get their word out, and are voters going to turn out to the polls with that short runway? Are they as in tune on this race as maybe some of the national audience are? So we'll see what turnout is going to be like. Special elections don't often get very high numbers. Primaries don't often get high numbers. And so you combine the two, you're not expecting significant turnout. And the big equation here is that we're very likely going to head to an August 28th runoff. If not one candidate gets more than a majority, and it's likely we'll have that runoff.
How does an endorsement by the president play out in the state?
Well, President Trump, obviously popular in South Carolina, although, recently it has taken a dip. Recent approval rating for him was just 42% in South Carolina, which is not great. But he's obviously still very popular in South Carolina. It was a little bit of a surprise. There was been some reporting that the thought was maybe he would have endorsed Russell Fry and not Darlene Graham. So when he did endorse Graham, it caught some people off guard, given that Russell Fry is very Trump aligned. Ralph Norman, another solidly Republican congressman who endorsed Nikki Haley, that might have upset the president a little bit, so he didn't endorse him. So there are a lot of choices that the president could have went with here for his endorsement. This may have come down a little bit to a friendship that he had with Lindsey Graham, and that bond that they were able to form, that he ended up going with Darlene Graham, a person who has never been in elected office, has not been in much political circles, really, except for her relationship with Lindsey Graham. So it's going to be interesting to see, how does she handle, if she's able to pull off a win, how does she handle a general election and a campaign season that she's really never handled before?
Is she well known in the state?
Not real well known for sure. I mean, you look at some of the polls before the president endorsed her, before Darlene Graham announced that she was going to run for this thing, and she had very low numbers because most people don't know her. They know Lindsey Graham, they know the Graham name, obviously, but Darlene Graham is someone who has worked on the state's vocational rehabilitation agency. She worked for the Commission for the Blind. So, a much completely different experience than these other folks who have lots of years of experience. The one person we also haven't mentioned is Mark Sanford, who, of course, is a former governor, former congressman, very well known in South Carolina, but has had a rocky past because of an extramarital affair in 2009 that really stalled his political career.
How was she received on the campaign trail, or how much campaigning has she done?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very short window, right, Greta, because we've only had a few weeks for her to actually get out there and meet people. I was going through her campaign website a little bit earlier and just trying to see what all she's put on there. One thing that's been interesting here, Greta, is that the president, endorsed Darlene Graham, and Darlene Graham is very much locked in line with Lindsey Graham. But one issue that they've broken on is the issue of the filibuster. And Darlene Graham says she would support getting rid of the filibuster, something that her late brother did not support doing. So she's very much going to be in line with the president, obviously supporting the Save America Act, which does not have a very likely future in the Senate, but she wants to support that. And so, her name recognition, not very good, but she's obviously taking stances on these issues that are going to fully align her with the president, with the hope that that gets her over the finish line in this special election and in the primary. The one thing I'll mention here, Greta, is that the president obviously has a very solid record when it comes to endorsements in Republican primaries when you look at over the past 10 years or so. But of recent, there have been a few breaks with that. A few of the people that he endorsed have not been successful. You look at Andy Ogles down in Tennessee, the congressman there. You look at Burt Jones for governor in Georgia. So there have been a few breaks as the president's approval rating has dropped.
How quickly will they count votes tonight? What do you expect, and when do you expect to hear it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how close this ends up being. There hasn't been a lot of polling because this has been such a short runway for this. Right now, the most recent poll had Darlene Graham ahead, and then not too far back was Russell Fry, Ralph Norman, and Mark Sanford kind of battling it out for a second place. If we get this to be very close, then it could be a longer night. But I expect Darlene Graham will likely look pretty good in that first place position if the polls do pan out, where it could be a little bit earlier night. But it could take some time as well, depending on what happens with that second place position.
Ruben Jones with Spectrum News. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much.
And we are teeing up South Carolina, where polls just closed at the top of the hour. We are waiting for polls to close in Connecticut, Alabama, Vermont, and then the marquee races that we're watching at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Minnesota and Wisconsin. That's when polls will close there. We want to include all of you on this primary night coverage. We want to get your take on campaign 2026 and what you're seeing on both the left and the right in the parties and which direction they are headed. If you're a Democrat, dial in at 202-748-8920. Republicans, 202-748-8921. And Independents, 202-748-8922. And if you voted today, we want to hear from you at 202-748-8923. I'll just say last week we had a lot of voters call in from Michigan. So let's have a Big Ten. Let's have a Big Ten challenge tonight. Wisconsin and Minnesota voters, we want to hear from you. All right, let's look at some early, very early primary results in South Carolina. 1% of the vote in. So very, very early on. These numbers are going to change. Ralph Norman in the lead right now over Senator Darlene Graham, Russell Fry, and others trailing behind.
Yeah, right now, the very early vote that we're getting is you saying it's about 6,000 votes that we have in so far, but it's pretty predictable right now. Norman is doing well in his congressional district, which takes in York County, just Rock Hill area, just south of Charlotte. And Russell Fry is running well in his 7th congressional district, which takes in Horry County. And we have Darlington County part of that in so far, about a quarter of the vote in. From what this looks like, it looks like it's going to be a very, very low turnout election. I think that, schools are just starting back. People are coming back. We have some of Charleston in, just a couple, some vote. Mark Sanford's doing very well there. He's from the Low Country. So again, these regional divides that you have, this is what I think makes this race a little difficult to handicap, because each member or people that have represented a district in the past, like Sanford, have these regional super, areas that they're going to do well in. Darlene Graham, though, is the real test. It's people, did they like her brother? Are they going to vote for her? I mean, I know my South Carolina sources were just floored when she decided to run for a full term. Everyone thought that she was just going to be a placeholder, sort of a nod to her brother's legacy. And obviously he had talked about her a lot on the campaign trail. Their parents died when she was very young. Lindsey Graham was in college and actually adopted her, took her on as a guardian so that she could get his military benefits. So they had a very close relationship. You can just see that she's grieving through this, but as well. But no one expected her to be a candidate for a full 6-year term.
Abby Turner, 4% of the vote in. We're showing from the Associated Press just the top 2 at this point. And the top 2, if no one reaches 50%, go on to a runoff later on this month. Short turnaround for these folks.
Very.
If no one gets 50%, what happens?
It's very short. And I think one thing we've seen in these races that go to runoffs, we saw this in the gubernatorial race in South Carolina. We saw this in Georgia with their gubernatorial race as well. Very short runoffs for these Trump-endorsed candidates. And he has not really come out of the woodworks for them. He hasn't really campaigned on the ground. You're not seeing any money really from MAGA Inc. being dished out for these candidates. So I think if Trump really wants to get Darlene Graham across the finish line in a runoff, he's going to have to either, show up in South Carolina or make an investment here.
So as we show our viewers the top 2 at this point with 5% of the vote in, and you're looking deeper than that. These numbers, by the way, from the Associated Press, that's where we get our numbers from on primary nights and election nights. And it'll be the Associated Press that gives the candidates the check marks. And we're anticipating 2 check marks for tonight, that this is headed for a runoff. Where are these other candidates right now?
Yeah, right now I'm looking at with about 5% of the vote in. We have Ralph Norman. He's sitting at about 19% given 5% that we have in. And then we have Mark Sanford, former governor, and then Mark Lynch there, kind of hovering around 5th place. But obviously these are going to change tonight. We have not gotten any votes in from Greenville County or Spartanburg County. Those are 2 places I'm watching tonight. During the June primary, that's where Ralph Norman carried the counties, and so did Mark Lynch. So areas that kind of split from how the state is feeling.
Jessica Taylor, the numbers and the names are jumping all over the place.
Yes, I mean, like I said, this is really because people are from such different regions of South Carolina, which is just really fascinating. I mean, this could end up being a really close one, but as Abby said, we do not have anything in from Greenville yet. I mean, the upstate is a traditionally very heavy Republican area. We don't have anything in from Columbia. The Grahams were originally from the upstate. They moved to Columbia. Darlene lives in Lexington now, I believe. But what we do have in, like I said, is the Myrtle Beach area, which is where Russell Fry is from. So I think that's what's popping him up there right now. Graham right now is kind of running second to a lot of these candidates in York County, where Ralph Norman is. Again, sort of Norman's base that I would expect him to do better in the upstate is not in yet. And I do think that, we'll see whether Mark Sanford has a big showing in Charleston. It's just going to be a fascinating night. I love South Carolina politics. So.
All right. Well, let's put a pin in it for now, and we'll come back to South Carolina as more of the votes roll in. Let's talk about Wisconsin. I want to show our viewers the ads that Wisconsinites have been seeing leading up to tonight's primary in that governor's race.
I'm here at the failed Foxconn manufacturing site. This is now a Microsoft AI data center plant. Just like in 2018 with Foxconn, Republicans will sell out our communities again.
I think we can say this is the 8th wonder of the world.
Flock cameras, poison groundwater, and eyesores that don't create future good jobs. $2 billion in tax breaks that you and I will be paying for. I'm the only candidate in this race to call for a moratorium on the construction of new AI data centers. We can't afford to be Foxconned again. The people deserve a say. It's time to press Control-Alt-Delete. to put a stop to this AI data center crisis. A full moratorium until we have the new regulations we need to protect our energy costs, our economy, our environment. I've been talking to Republicans, Democrats, independents across the state, and they're telling me that they don't like these data centers, that they don't want them here. But our elected officials aren't all listening yet. We should be focusing on Wisconsin, not Wall Street. As governor, on day one, I'll call a special session of the legislature for a moratorium on the construction of new AI data centers. So we're going to keep doing what we've been doing throughout this campaign, driving around the state, helping communities make their voices heard and hold their elected officials accountable. Because when we organize, we win. And until we have the regulations in place, we're pulling the plug.
News.
Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley
is re-entering the race. He's back in the race for Wisconsin governor.
One of the most dramatic shifts we have seen in Wisconsin politics.
So allow me to reintroduce myself. This is super exciting.
I am proud to support David Crowley.
This election is too important to gamble on. I have the experience, I have the judgment, and the record to build the type of coalition that we need to defeat Tom Tiffany.
This time with the endorsement of Governor Tony Evers.
Evers endorsing David Crowley is unprecedented.
Congresswoman Gwen Moore endorsing Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley.
A major endorsement, Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson.
Wisconsin's future would be stronger with David Crowley as our governor.
He is also backed by Sheboygan Mayor Ryan Sorensen and Waukesha Mayor Alicia Halvensleben.
I am thrilled to support David Crowley.
Backed by labor and progressives all across the great state of Wisconsin. We encourage all of labor to get behind David.
It's been a whirlwind week.
Everything has increased within the past week. A lot of grassroots supporters.
We need a leader who represents us all.
I'm a community organizer. I'm a county executive. I'm a girl dad, and I'm one hell of a proud dad. It is time for us to fight back, y'all.
Welcome to Breakfast with the Tiffanys, where nobody bites their tongue.
Tom, you've got to fix health care. No one knows what it costs.
I'm going to make it be more transparent.
Young families can't afford housing.
I will stop Wall Street from buying our homes and reverse the 400-year property tax hike.
What about waste and fraud?
We're going to audit every state agency to protect our tax dollars.
Tom, you know Ma's going to hold you to it.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm Tom Tiffany. I grew up on a dairy farm milking cows just like this one. Madison politicians, they've been milking you for every dollar. And now, the cost of living, it's utterly ridiculous. I'm running for governor to make life more affordable. Stop Wall Street from buying our homes, big data from bulldozing our farmland, and audit state government to clean out waste and fraud in Madison. I'm gonna need a bigger shovel, right, Daisy?
The leading candidates for governor in Wisconsin tonight, Wisconsin voters will find out who will be the nominees for each party. Abby Turner, when you look at this governor's race, what have been the themes and what is resonating with voters there?
I will say, especially in the Democratic primary, it's data centers, data centers, data centers. It's something we've seen through and through this cycle. I think a good comparison is last week in Kansas. You saw Cindy Holscher pull through because she called for a moratorium on data centers. I think when we look at this nationally, we're seeing moderate versus progressive. But for a lot of voters on the ground, Hong's promise to call a special session to put a moratorium on data centers will be a single issue for some of these voters to turn out to the polls for her.
Jessica Taylor?
I mean, I'm seeing this as an issue across the board. Abby's right. This was an issue in Kansas. We're seeing it be an issue in the Texas governor's race. We're seeing it being an issue. Sherrod Brown is running ads hitting John Husted in the Ohio Senate race. So this is, I mean, you talk with anyone locally or focus groups that I've sat in on, and like there is just such a fear of these data centers that they feel like that is zapping up resources, that is driving up their electric bills, that is driving up their just expenses. And I think there's just a lot of skepticism of AI. You see that among even young people. They feel like it's taking their jobs away. So I think Hong really honed in on a very salient issue. And it was notable that you have not seen Crowley, come out against it when they held their loan debate. Really, no one laid a hand on Francesca Hong, even though she was very clearly the front runner at that point. So I think that if we had seen another candidate come out forcefully against data centers, maybe that could have made a difference. Like I said, this race has been so topsy-turvy that I think Hong has just benefited that she's outlasted and she's honed in on just a really salient issue that is hitting in local communities. It's hitting in rural areas. It just really crosses the political spectrum almost.
And it's an open seat. Why?
Tony Evers, the governor, he could have run for a third term. He decided not to. Now Evers has come out and very forcefully backed David Crowley. He's campaigned with him in the closing weeks. I think that, initially when Crowley got back in the race after initially dropping out, Evers was actually out of the country on a trade mission. And that could have helped that could have stunted some early momentum that Crowley could have gotten. But Evers has been very skeptical of Hong and has said, flat out, he really doubts that she can win. So he's casting this in an electability argument. We saw last week in Michigan that it almost rang true. But I think also, we're watching to see, are the polls off here in Wisconsin in the same way? We haven't had as many polls as we did in the Michigan race. What we have seen is, again, continue to show Francesca Hong in the lead, but Crowley, could he pull off some late momentum? It's not out of the question.
Let's talk a little bit about Francesca Hong. I want to show our viewers a clip of her from this week campaigning ahead of today's primary contest.
Why do you think AOC and Senator Bernie Sanders have not endorsed you?
I have so much respect for the senator and the congresswoman, and they are working tirelessly to make sure that we can flip Congress and the Senate and get Democrats wins in the midterms. I look forward to conversations with them about that too.
Does it show that they don't think you're able to win this battleground state?
A gubernatorial race is different from federal elections. And I think that we are focused on making sure to reach every single voter that we can up until those polls close. And that's what we're focusing on right now.
Come August 12th, if you win, how hard will unity be among Democrats looking ahead to November?
I look forward to being in community and building unity, and I feel very confident that we'll be able to show folks that Democrats are coming together to make sure that Democrats win down and up the ballot this November.
What do you say to critics from within your own party who fear that if you win the primary, you'll drag down some of those down ballot Democrats?
Change can be scary, but when I get scared, I look to the voters who remind me every day that not only are we deserving of change, but they get to be a part of making that change. This election belongs to the voters, and we'll let the voters decide.
You just said this election is not about the tweets when you were talking to the canvassers earlier today, but it's gotten so much attention. I know you've acknowledged that in the past. What do you say to voters who see those comments and the back and forth about them and say it's either disqualifying or that in your clarification, you're trying to have it both ways?
What's disqualifying is Tom Tiffany still will not say who won the 2020 election. What's disqualifying is that he has voted to send tax dollars to forever wars, for gas prices going up, for grocery stores growing up. He doesn't care about Wisconsinites. He cares about the Trump administration, who he will put Trump first, and Wisconsin deserves a governor that will put Wisconsinites first.
What do you make of Governor Evers saying in recent days you have focused too much on the tweets and David Crowley is the one who's gotten things done?
Service industry workers, I'm proud to be one, and we're built different. I said we've held over 320 events since we started this campaign. We've locked in over 50,000 miles. Just in the last couple of days, we've done 24 cities in 4 days. I knew as a wild card, as an outsider, I would have to out-hustle folks. And what that has allowed us to do is actually listen to more voters, to meet more voters, and make sure that voters know that they have a fighter in Francesca Hong and our movement.
Thank you all. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Speaking of AOC, can I ask one more question? I'm not sure if you saw, but she commented something along the lines of that woke 1.0 was crazy back then in terms of what she put out. She seems to imply that the more modern woke mentality is more moderate. Do you agree with that?
I think more and more people across this state and this country, they are opening their eyes to an economy that is deeply rigged against working class people. So we're going to respond to make sure that we talk about the solutions and how we can deliver for working class people by taxing the ultra rich, ensure that we have a moratorium on data centers, that we're raising wages, fighting for universal child care, and that we fully fund our public schools. That's what we want more people to become awake to, that these things are possible, and our campaign, We Make Better Possible. Thanks.
Francesca Hung talking to reporters on the eve of primary night yesterday in Madison. Abby Turner, who is she?
She is a state representative. She represents one of the, I think, the bluest district in Wisconsin. She, has talked about working in the service industry, being a single mother, a lot of these characteristics that I think we've seen with very successful progressives this cycle. And it's something that has really helped her coalesce and lock down the leftmost flank in Wisconsin. And that's why you saw her have such a good lead early on. And that has just continued to kind of spiral and build up on it as progressives across the country have momentum.
Why didn't she get the endorsement then from Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
I think they're a little skeptical of her. As Jessica had said earlier last week, Abdullah Saeed, not, a DSA member in name. He is a progressive, but he does not align with the DSA party. Hong does, and I think it's a very risky bet for, Sanders or AOC to take to endorse Hong here.
She hasn't been the most polished candidate. I think that if she wins, you're going to see National Democrats need to sort of come in and almost take over her campaign. She's sort of eschewed traditional consultants. She hasn't run traditional TV ads. She's focused more. But you have to speak to the grassroots strength of her campaign that she has been able to do. She has thousands of volunteers, door knocking. This has been a real grassroots movement from the beginning that she's been able to do. But again, I think she benefited from the split field, and just the chaos of the primary as well. But she doesn't. Abdullah Syed was a very gifted communicator. We could see that. She struggles. I think she needs some, I think you're going to see, again, National Democrats come in there and sort of try to have some discipline and media training, and maybe not going on every cable interview that she's asked to. So it'll be interesting to see if she is the nominee, how her campaign changes after this.
You said earlier at the top that she had some controversies as well along the way.
Yeah, she's talked about, she's had tweets about Thanksgiving, about different holidays, about it sort of being a colonial type holiday. But, I was texting with a source when this came up, and they said, what she should have done in the way that Zoran Mamdani is skilled at doing is sort of turning it into, well, yes, I love Thanksgiving. I'm a chef, but what is too high is Trump's economy is making everything cost more. Driving it back to cost, having that instead of sort of tripping over her words in many ways, and that Republicans are just going to use that. I had another source tell me, she just sort of needs to come across as normal and not outside of the mainstream, and that's what I think she's struggling with. And I think, maybe that's why you haven't seen Bernie Sanders and AOC sort of flock to her campaign. I'm sure that they will get on board if she is the nominee, but I think there's a worry that she could sort of not derail the entire movement, but certainly set them back, especially if they lose a very winnable race. And Wisconsin's critical when you look at the 2028 math. They want to have a Democratic governor there in place when it comes to election laws. They're looking at trying to take back the state Senate and the state assembly there, redistricting that could happen. So there's just a lot of things that Democrats could really be derailed by if Tom Tiffany ends up winning this race.
Bernie Sanders has been mocked for his explanation as to why he didn't endorse in this race, saying, I wasn't paying attention or something along those lines. And he's been paying attention to a lot of races.
Yeah, I would say he's paying attention to Wisconsin. And I think that's probably why he didn't endorse here. I think that my sources have told me, if Hong is the nominee, this moves from being a referendum on Trump's second term on Washington to being a referendum on democratic socialism. That's not something that Sanders and AOC want to kind of duke out in a state like Wisconsin.
Did she catch the establishment off guard?
I think so. I think what she was very much able to do successfully is early on, you have a lot of candidates fighting for the moderate lane here. She was able to go to kind of, the 2016 Bernie bros, the most progressive flanks of Wisconsin, really consolidate them early on, you know, she was leading in polls with 11, 12%. And I think that's when people are like, okay, well, she is kind of leading here, a lot of undecideds. Let's see where this shakes out, and then just continue to build and build and build.
And the polls tonight show what on the Democratic side here? Is she in the lead?
She has been in the lead. Crowley was inching up there. You have two other candidates in there as well that have been in the single digits, but they could factor in here as well. So with Kelda Roys and Joel Brennan. And Royce has run in a more progressive lane too, but she's not a Democratic socialist. But I think Abby's right. You know, Hong took the lane, and you had, like I said, the lieutenant governor was seen as the choice that everyone is going to get behind. She had her campaign manager was mismanaging her campaign account. She was essentially broke, and so she had to withdraw. That's when David Crowley got back in. Mandela Barnes gets out amidst some allegations and different things. So it's been, I mean, this has just been a wild ride. It really has been.
Let's talk about her top challenger, David Crowley. Here he is on the campaign trail.
We need a governor who doesn't just talk about problems. We need someone who's going to solve them. And that's what I've done my entire career. Now let's compare that to Tom Terrible Tiffany. Don't boo, vote. Well, we're fighting for working families each and every single day and making life more affordable. He is focused on dividing us. He supported some of the most restrictive abortion policies in our entire country. He voted against certifying the 2020 presidential election. And instead of bringing people together to solve problems, he has chosen partisan politics over the people of Wisconsin. I believe Wisconsin deserves something different. A governor who will fight for working families each and every single day. A governor who will lower costs for families. A governor who will fully fund our public schools. A governor who will make child care and health care more accessible and more affordable. We need a governor who will build an economy where every community, urban, suburban, and rural, has the opportunity to succeed. That's the Wisconsin I'm fighting for, y'all. So I'm asking you all on Tuesday, August 11th, to vote for David Crowley. If you've already voted, thank you. But let's make sure that we're calling our friends, we're calling our neighbors, and letting them know what's at stake during this election. Because we need to build a winning coalition that's going to send us to the mountaintop. Because at the end of the day, after we get through this August 11th primary, on August 12th, we need to come together. Because our ultimate goal is to make sure that we don't have a MAGA extremist occupying the governor's office here in the state of Wisconsin. And now it is, and I want to just be honest. I'm going to put these talking points up. You know, it has been an honor and a pleasure to have received the endorsement of our great governor, Governor Tony Evers. He has been the steady, calm strength we have needed for the past 8 years. He defeated Scott Walker. He protected our communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. He's been a fierce defender of our democracy. And he has been the best damn goalie Democrats could have had in the state of Wisconsin. Governor Evers has never stopped working for working families in this state. So please put your hands together for our great governor of the state of Wisconsin, Mr. Tony Evers, y'all.
David Crowley campaigning yesterday ahead of today's primary contest in Wisconsin. He's a Milwaukee County executive, former state representative. And Jessica Taylor, he was in, then he was out, then he was back in, along with Tony Evers.
Yeah, I mean, Evers had not endorsed until Sarah Rodriguez dropped out, and Crowley, when he dropped out, he endorsed Sarah Rodriguez. But then when Rodriguez dropped out, Tony Evers implored Crowley to get back in. I mean, he's someone that's really well-liked in Milwaukee, well-liked among the business community. I've even talked with Republican sources that think that he's been a good county executive. So he has, I think, certainly broader appeal in a general election, but I think he just had a short runway of getting back in there. If this had been a Francesca Hong versus David Crowley, 2 to 3 month runway, I think this would look like this could be a very different primary.
Abby?
I think one thing about kind of Crowley re-entering is it plays into Hong's anti-establishment message. You have someone that hopped out, Democrats are scrambling to find someone to put up against Hong, and you have the sitting governor who wasn't going to endorse Crowley as he gets back in. So he has done very good in fundraising since he's been in, the last 2 to 3 weeks, I want to say, but you haven't seen that enthusiasm really translate into a commanding lead or even just a commanding second place to Hong here.
All right, we're getting results coming in South Carolina. We'll see more from Connecticut, Vermont, Alabama, and then, of course, 9 p.m. Eastern time is when we will see the first results in Wisconsin in the race that we're talking about, along with other races as well, and in the state of Minnesota, where we're keeping our eyes on primary contests for both Senate and governor's races in Minnesota. Join us tonight. Democrats, 202-748-8920 is your number. Republicans, 202-748-8921. Independents, 202-748-8922. And if you voted today, we want to hear from you at 202-748-8923. Let's go to Thomas here in Washington, D.C. in our line for Democrats. Thomas, you've got some thoughts on these Wisconsin races. Thomas, are you there in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi, there you go.
Hello. I wanted to talk actually about the South Carolina race. I want to say I am a Democrat. I watched the Republican debate between all the Senate challengers, and I do want to say I hope that Darlene does not win because I think she did not conduct herself very well, and I don't think she has any qualifications to be the senator, the permanent senator from South Carolina. I think I'd be a better senator, frankly, and I hope to see, either Norman or Fry win, and at least they have experience because really I don't see any qualifications other than the fact that it was her brother. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, Thomas, there.
I do think that it does look like at this point that Graham is going to secure one of the slots in the runoff, and it does look like right now, like Fry, we have some coming in from the upstate, and Ralph Norman is winning that, but Russell Fry in his congressional district is currently, he's in second. His congressional district is turning out strong for him. I think that she's the underdog, though, in any runoff, really, because
once it becomes a two-person race.
Exactly, which is similar to what we saw in the governor's race, that you had Pamela Yvette that came out, was Trump's original pick. Came out, but then she lost the runoff badly. And Trump even endorsed, he did his double endorsement and endorsed the eventual winner, the Attorney General, Alan Wilson. Trump likes Fry a lot. If this gets down, especially to Fry and to Graham, does Trump issue a dual endorsement there? He likes Norman a little bit less because he actually endorsed Nikki Haley in the 2024 presidential primary. So likes Mark Sanford even less because Mark Sanford ran against him. So there's sort of levels of where Trump likes and doesn't like some of these. But the concern with Fry is that he could leave his congressional seat open at the advent of a new Congress. And so if it is a very close margin in the House of Representatives at the beginning of 2027, that is one of the concerns, or I think that Trump might have backed Russell Fry. That was everything that we were hearing, was that was who he was going to go with. He helped him defeat Tom Rice, who voted for impeachment for back in 2022. But I really think that Trump had sort of a just an unusual moment, I think, of solemnness almost, because he was really close with Lindsey Graham. And I think that he was really grieving, which we don't see Trump show a lot of emotion. And I think he did in this moment and went with Graham's sister.
And right now, with 26% of the vote in, Abby Turner, the candidates seem to be in the president's preferred order here.
They do. Yeah, I'm looking at Greenville and Spartanburg. These are the two I had mentioned earlier. This is a place where Norman is doing really well. But you look at, Columbia there, Darlene Graham performing very well with about, 99% of the votes counted. She's got about 31% there to Russell Fry's 26. So if you're President Trump tonight, I think you're feeling good, but I think you need to think about your next steps of how involved am I going to be in a runoff with Darlene Graham and potentially Fry or Norman here.
Does he need to get involved to get excitement, enthusiasm, people to turn out, and for somebody to get the nomination here?
Again, I think that Darlene Graham just suffers from the fact that her brother was a controversial figure within the Republican Party. I think and you heard the one caller, I think there is concern, does she have the qualifications to be senator? This is someone that wasn't even on the political scene until a month ago. So I think that, Russell Fry, he's running, he has experience, he has a conservative record. Norman certainly does as well. He's part of the House Freedom Caucus. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there's been a hesitation among a lot of Republican leaders to come out against Trump. But privately, there's a lot of skepticism about just the type of Graham and her ability to get a majority, which she needs in this August 25th runoff.
All right. Well, we will check back in on South Carolina here in a few minutes. But first, let's hear from Mark in Richmond, Virginia, on our line for Democrats.
Yes, I just want to call in while the polls are open in Wisconsin and Minnesota to encourage votes for Angie Craig in Minnesota and David Crowley in Wisconsin. The first race is Senate. The second one is governor.
And why is that, Mark? What do you like about those two candidates?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has a problem in underperforming by choosing candidates that are less than ideal to run against the Republicans. And I also think back to 2016 when this whole mess started with Donald Trump, when the Democrats lost Wisconsin because of low voter turnout in Milwaukee. I encourage the people in Milwaukee to come out there in great numbers. The polls are still open. And let's not make the same mistake that was made before.
Okay, so Abby Turner, he wants some more moderate Democrats.
Yes. I think one place, because I know he had mentioned Milwaukee, one place I'm looking at tonight is the WOW counties here. It's the 3 counties north of Milwaukee. Those are areas, Republicans still have a stronghold here, but Democrats are gaining steam in the suburbs. This is a place, if you see someone like Crowley or Roy is doing really well, it's a good sign for them that Democrats in, swingier red areas are leaning towards more of the electability argument that our caller was making.
Alex in California, an independent. Thank you for joining us on primary night.
Hello, how are you guys?
Doing well. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are just, I used to be a Democrat, and then after, seeing everything online with the recent elections, I switched to independent, but it's what fools me or fools America is that we go to the media for information, and if you turn on 3 different stations, you'll hear 3 different opinions, and it's not what we want to see. If you go to MS Now, they push the radical agendas. If you go to CNN, they're more neutral. You go to Fox, they're far right. You go to Newsmax, but in reality, I live in California, and there's a governor race between Bahara and Hilton, and the Democrats want to do everything in their power to keep power. I mean, Newsom is really, honestly, I voted for him in the beginning, and I will never vote for a Democrat again based on what I see online and what I see in person. Even look at the mayor race. So,
what is it that you're seeing from Democrats that you don't like, Alex?
Honestly, how much every time they don't really have anything, their safe word is Trump. It's like if you say Trump, you're going to get credit, but they never tell us what they're going to do. They had Obama for 8 years. They had who else? Biden for 4. They had Trump for 4. But they've been in control of our government for almost 16 years or 12 years.
Okay.
And they haven't done anything. I mean, it's like they use us as their bait to get into power. And once they have power, they don't want to let go.
Okay.
And that's what's happening.
All right, got it, Alex. So Jessica Taylor, is this a problem for Democrats? I mean, you can't just always run against Trump. You have to run for something too, right?
Yeah, and I think this is sort of the feeling that they feel like, that they have an answer on affordability, that they can talk about these different issues. But I think these progressives feel like they have an answer too for Medicare for all, that they have bolder plans. I think that's why you're seeing you have primary voters right now that are wanting someone to stand up and fight Trump, but they also say that they have plans in order to do that. And I think that they feel like centrists would just sort of more go along, work across the aisle more. I mean, but that is how you win in competitive states. So there's really, two really schools of thoughts, but that a primary electorate is so different than a general election electorate.
Let's go back to that Wisconsin governor's race. In the general election, what is it looking like for which party?
We've seen polling that has shown Crowley more competitive with Tom Tiffany in the Marquette polling. Hong is still competitive, but she is behind him. So it's very close, and I think that really we will see. I will trust the polls more sort of after this primary, but I think that Hong, like I said, has really damaged herself in the past few weeks and has really given Republicans a lot of ammunition and clips to use against her. You've had the RGA running ads trying to promote Hong, talking about how she is the more progressive. We see both sides use this tactic to try to prop up more conservative or more liberal candidates in their primaries. I mean, she hasn't run her own TV ads other than streaming, and so she's benefited from this. But you have David Crowley saying, look who the Republicans want to run against, and there's a reason why, and why I'm the more electable candidate. But then again, we saw Haley Stevens last week make the same argument that fell flat.
All right, so in the general election, the presumptive nominee on the right is Congressman Tom Tiffany. Here he is campaigning this week with Virginia Governor, former Governor Glenn Youngkin.
There's a current in the air among Republican supporters of yours that they may vote for Francesca Hong tomorrow in order to make your chances better in November. What would you tell them?
I would recommend that they vote on the Republican side. So I think most people know here, you choose in Wisconsin, it's a closed primary. You either vote Republican or you vote Democrat. If you're a Republican, I recommend that you vote Republican because there are plenty of primaries that are going on around the state that are going to decide the future of Wisconsin, and we want the best Republicans possible that are going to be running in this election in 2026. Yes, ma'am.
Tell us how.
Give your name and your...
Oh, sure. Hi, my name is Imani. I'm with WISN 12 in Milwaukee.
Oh, great.
Thanks for having us. Could you tell us how you're preparing for the general election campaigning to start on Wednesday? And additionally, do you want to run against Francesca Hong?
So first of all, I'm going to make sure that I win first tomorrow night. But we've been running a general election campaign from the very start. From the time we started nearly a year ago, we've been running to represent all of the people of the state of Wisconsin. I did not want to get caught in the trap of just thinking in terms of a primary when the people of the state of Wisconsin, they want a vision for the future. Because we're going to decide in November which direction we're going to go. Are we going to go in the direction of decline like Minnesota and Illinois? Or are we going to be one of the great states in America? And I know we have wonderful people in the state of Wisconsin. We have people like Mitch, who has been working hard here during his adult years, wants to buy a home, have it for his family, and people want to know that their next governor has a vision to make sure that home ownership is affordable, that we make sure that our streets are safe, and that someone is going to lead the state that has the perspective that will make Wisconsin one of the great states in America once again. Because whoever wins on the other side, we are prepared to face them. I think you saw it in the debates a couple weeks ago when none of the candidates took on Francesca Hong and the agenda that she has laid out here for Wisconsin. Abolish prisons, abolish police, highest tax rates in the country if we adopt her agenda. And none of them challenged her. So it's very clear that the leadership of the Democrat Party, and I don't think this reflects all Democrats across Wisconsin, but certainly amongst the leadership, they have capitulated to the big government socialism that she's selling.
Congressman Tom Tiffany there campaigning this week ahead of tonight's primary contest for governor. He currently represents the 7th district in the state of Wisconsin, endorsed by the president, and supports the current Wisconsin abortion law, which is up to 5 months. We're at the top of the hour here. It's primary night in America on C-SPAN, and we are bringing you all the results from that Wisconsin race there, the governor's race, as well as Minnesota Senate, Minnesota governor's, statewide races, House seats as well. There is the map on your screen. Polls have closed in the special primary to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. We have polls closing right now in Alabama and Connecticut, and we're getting some early results from Vermont as well. Coming up this evening are those marquee matchups in Wisconsin and in Minnesota. Governor's primary race in Vermont on the Democratic side. Jessica Taylor, tell us about this race.
This is a solid Republican race, even though it's Vermont. Phil Scott, the governor, now Vermont and New Hampshire, the only states that elect their governors for 2-year terms instead of 4-year terms. So Phil Scott has won very comfortably. He is a unicorn. He has broken with his party. He has criticized President Trump. So whichever Democrat wins here, it looks like it's very close. Amanda Janneau is an economist. Allie Richards works at the University of Vermont Medical Center. She's a former gubernatorial aide. But they would be the underdog to Scott. I think that Democrats, they would target this seat whenever he decides to retire. But right now, he is on a glide path to another 2-year term.
All right. Going back to Wisconsin, Abby Turner and Congressman Tom Tiffany campaigning with the former governor from Virginia. Surprising. I mean, does Glenn Youngkin have that much sway?
I don't think Glenn Youngkin has that much sway right now, but it's a choice, I think, to campaign with him. You know, he's not this huge MAGA figure, and that's what Tiffany's trying to avoid. He doesn't want to, be the face of MAGA in this race. I think the way I would describe him when you watch him speak and you look at his ads is he's kind of trying to be like nice, folksy Midwest grandpa. You see he has an ad that we all played earlier about, breakfast with the Tiffanys. Very much trying to strike the Midwest tone, come off, very kind, very folksy. And that's something that Democrats, they've tried to get out early. The DJ has, attacking him as a MAGA extremist. But he's on air with almost $7 million in positive ads. He's run basically a general election campaign since January when he cleared the field.
Yeah, and I think this was really critical, the fact that he didn't have a serious primary challenge. So he wasn't pulled to the right, as we've seen other Republicans have been in their races. So he could tack more to the middle. He could try to run a Youngkin-esque campaign in that regard. So I think that Youngkin is a good model to him to look to. And, Virginia's not a swing state. It's a tilting blue state, obviously. But Youngkin was successful there. And I think that, again, I had a source say to me, and it stuck with me, Tom Tiffany, he comes across as normal. And if Francesca Hong, if she sounds like she's from outer space, like that's not what you want to do. And I think that some of the tweets that they're going to resurface, if she doesn't come across better on television and say, of course I like Thanksgiving and I love my family and it's a good Midwestern holiday and everything. Again, if she can turn it around and start talking about cost and affordability, that's a win for her. And that could be a win for the DSA in that regard. But I think that when you get where she's very weak on policing, she did try to walk back some of her comments at that debate, saying that, the governor could not defund the police. So she's trying to sort of not necessarily moderate, but I think roll back some of her previous tweets. But we're just going to see if she's the nominee. That Republicans, I think, are just sitting on a mountain of opposition research of her past social media posts.
Abby Turner, as you look at the state of Wisconsin, beyond the races, the governor's race there, what about House races that we need to keep an eye on tonight when polls close at 9 p.m. Eastern time?
Yeah, I have my eye on Wisconsin's 3rd congressional district. That is probably one of Democrats' best pickup opportunities this cycle. We're likely seeing a rematch between Derek Van Orden and 2024 nominee Rebecca Cook, the Democrat here. She's a former political consultant, a nonprofit founder, but she likes to lean more into her time as a waitress, kind of leaning into the affordability issues that Dems want to run on this cycle. She's the favorite, but in the topic of the night, you're seeing kind of more this progressive in the Democratic primary, gaining a little bit of steam, but she really has not broken through on the polling and the fundraising front.
If it is a Cook-Van Orden rematch, how close was it last time around?
It was very, very close, and I think this cycle with Democratic headwinds may just be the cycle to get her over the finish line. She's, well known, obviously, she's run here before, but I also think Derek Van Orden has had some, not so nice moments in the press, just kind of with his temperament and stuff. So I think her kind of persona, even though she doesn't want to talk about the political consulting stuff, all of that, if she can lean in more into this, working class affordability, I think that really just bleeds into what Democrats are talking a lot about this cycle.
Yeah, this is one of the top pickup opportunities for Democrats in the country. We at the Cook Political Report currently rate this race as a toss-up.
What is it about this district?
I mean, it's a very closely divided district, but I do think that Van Orden, like I said, he has had some incidents that he's come across as very aggressive, and he's a very divisive figure. And I think that Cook has, with not having the presidential race atop the ticket, that she has a better shot this time.
All right, we're getting results tonight coming in from primary states across the country. Which direction are the parties headed here in November for these general election matchups? And we want all of you to join us in part of our coverage tonight. Democrats dial in 202-748-8920, Republicans 202-748-8921, and Independents 202-748-8922. And if you voted today, we want to hear from you at 202-748-8923. We'll go to Tim, who's in Norris, South Carolina, a Republican. Hi, Tim.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Tim, did you vote in this special primary election to replace the late Senator Graham?
I did.
Okay. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Sanford.
Okay. Tell us why.
He, out of all the candidates, I felt that, with his history of being our governor, he has the best record, proven to be able to take care of South Carolina. My issues with the other candidates, so Graham, it's just unheard of that she, first off, I didn't like that she was taking Lindsay's place after his passing. I felt like that she was, kind of had a special treatment put in that position, and then now I feel like she's kind of just being forced upon us, and she has no experience, and so that really concerns me. I wasn't a big fan of Lindsey Graham. I didn't vote for him or Mark Lynch because I'm not a fan of Lynch either. Norman, I just not a fan of his policies. Fry, I feel like he negatively has picked up on the smear campaign tactics that Lindsay had ran before, which was something that had turned me off on him. And, looking at how results are coming in now, it looks like Sanford is not going to have much of a good chance. But I feel like South Carolina, Democrats are definitely, they're picking up their footing. And I feel like it's very important to for the Senate and House, for those races to have strong Republican candidates to secure that seat. And I think it's probably going to go into a runoff. Whether it's going to be Fry or Norman is going to be kind of a toss-up, but I would
Tim,
have
what
to
about
lean away from Graham.
Okay, so Tim, what about the president's endorsement here? Did that have any sway over you?
So, I've backed Trump in every election, but it didn't. I think the longer that he's been in power, the less likely I have been willing to lean his way on his, especially with Graham. Like I said, I didn't really understand why she was put in that position in the first place, and then getting the presidential backing, I just felt like there was a lot better candidates that deserved that. Nomination from him. All
right. Tim in Norris, South Carolina Republican. Thanks for calling in tonight. Abby Turner.
I think people do really like Sanford. He definitely is the one that has strayed the most from Trump, but, he's a deficit hawk. He is not afraid to criticize Republicans on, spending, the growing national debt. So if you're a type of conservative, that is the concern going to the polls. I think that's what appeals about him. Obviously, he has, his past scandals in 2009 with the extramarital affair, but as it's looking now with about 27% of the votes in, he's sitting below Fry and Norman, so does not
How much below? Because our viewers on the screen can only see the top three.
Yes, so he's at about 14.7% with 27% of the vote in.
Okay, so he's trailing at this point, quite a bit behind Ralph Norman, who's third right now. But again, it's early and these numbers have been changing.
Right. Yeah, I think this is a three-way race. Really, I think Darlene Graham has secured one of the spots, and this really looks like it's a battle between Fry and Norman. When I'm looking at what's still out there, there's not a lot of Greenville County in, or about half Spartanburg is in. So if he runs up big margins there in the upstate, his home of York County, there's only about 12% in. There's still a lot left in the PD area there that Fry is from, so that could certainly come in for him still. I think we just don't really know how much votes are out there again because this was a very low turnout election. But I think Sanford, from my sources there in South Carolina, he's a good campaigner. He's a good retail campaigner. You know, when he was governor, he brought these two pigs on the floor called Pork and Barrel, saying that he was going to cut spending. He did this again in this campaign. So, you know, he's a very creative person. I think he just really felt like he really feels strongly about debt and deficit, but, you know, that he's pointed out the Trump administration has racked up the deficit too. So I think that this is not 2010 fiscal conservatism, it's about Trumpism now.
If you want to play campaign analyst tonight and dig into the counties of South Carolina and see what Abby and Jessica can see, go to our website, cspan.org/results. And you can go county by county and look to see where the vote stands, how many votes are in, who's winning in that specific county, and help our viewers out who want to do this, Jessica and Abby. So which counties should they be looking at right now as we approach the first hour? We're headed into the second hour of polls closing.
I mean, Greenville County is really key. Again, that's one of the fastest growing counties in South Carolina, the upstate. I'm a little biased. I went to college there, go Paladins. But it's a beautiful county, but it's again it has been one of the most heavily Republican areas. Columbia County, Richland County, excuse me, which takes in Columbia. There, I expect Graham is doing very well there. Again, she's from the suburbs there. The PD region, that's Myrtle Beach, Horry County. Charleston is the low country, so each part of the state really has its own distinct area. Sanford, we don't have a lot in from Charleston, but he is winning that right now, but it looks like that's just early vote. But, you know, when you sort of see the colors there, you can see that Norman is doing well in his congressional district 5 and in the upstate, which, as Abby mentioned, he actually won, even though he came in third in that gubernatorial primary. I think Norman just benefited that having had run that gubernatorial campaign, his name ID was higher. You know, there is sort of a brand of sort of the House Freedom Caucus is very strong there in the upstate, so I think that benefited him as well in that area. But again, we're just waiting for more votes to be counted. So I would again look to, I think the upstate is really key, and the PD region.
All right, we will check back in on South Carolina in a bit. Mallory, who's in Schofield, Wisconsin, on our line for Democrats. Mallory, did you vote today?
I did vote today. I voted for the first time as a Wisconsin resident. I just relocated here earlier this year, so I've been paying a lot of attention to the elections that have been running, and I have found it all very interesting because, you know, there were a lot of Democrats in the field for me to choose from, and it appears that Hong is going to be the front runner. But
and who did you vote for, Mallory? Who did you vote for?
I did vote for Hong. I'm interested in a lot of her policies, and I think she's kind of being held to this old political standard in a landscape of politics that is nowhere near standard anymore. I think a lot of politicians and people are trying to figure out how to navigate this political landscape that we have going on now. And, like, I think being held to old, tweets and all this cancel culture that a lot of the right are so hard on is really interesting when we have like a president on Truth Social going off every day, and he's not being held to those same standards. And similarly, I find Tom Tiffany to be a very interesting candidate because at first watching his commercials, I was like, he's saying all the right things for a conservative, but knowing that he's backed by Trump, they don't hold a lot of weight to me.
So, Mallory, do you think that if Francesca Hong were to get the nomination tonight, do you think she can win in a general election? Do you think she can surprise people?
I do. I do think she can surprise people, and I think that maybe that's just from my perspective of being I'm on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z, so I see a lot of younger people getting involved in politics for the first time, and I think that she has a lot of that weight that she can carry with the younger crowd.
Okay, Mallory there in Wisconsin on our line for Democrats. We appreciate the call. Abby Turner, your take.
I think we can talk all we want about, Hong maybe putting this seat at risk for Democrats. But on the flip side, Democrats have been struggling with, young voters, rural voters, white working class voters. If that's something that Hong can appeal to, that's really good for Democrats. I think we're at this moment where Democrats are trying to figure out how do we win these voters back. And I think part of this progressive wave that we're seeing is starting to test if that's the lane for that.
I mean, we would not shift this race if Hong wins. I do think that the environment is good enough for Democrats that she is still competitive. So I'm not saying that she cannot win. I just think that Crowley is the safer general election pick. But again, if she can get out younger voters who are typically lower propensity voters, but if they are energized this cycle, if we see Democrats that are energized, but again, in Wisconsin, it comes down to those independent voters. And a lot of them have split their tickets for Trump, but if you hear, they have soured on Trump. Gubernatorial elections, though, are more about candidates than federal issues. And so I think this is where you could see where I do think Tiffany, he comes across as a compelling candidate. But if Democrats are committed to this race, then you're going to see a lot of spending in here.
All right, well, let's go to the ground. Baylor Spears is joining us here. She's with the Wisconsin Examiner, staff reporter there. This is part of the state's newsroom. Baylor Spears, how do primaries work in the state of Wisconsin?
Primary voters have been at the polls today. People can vote in either the Democratic or the Republican primary. You can't, cross over. But there was some discussion amongst some Republicans about whether they should cross over and vote for Hong, help her out, because they see her as sort of the weaker candidate in the primary election. But Tom Tiffany, he sort of said the other day, you should not do that. You should vote here in the Republicans primary. But yeah, I'm here at Francesca Hong's election night party, and polls close at 8, so in about 45 minutes. And then we will see how long it takes for votes to come in.
8 p.m. Central. What do you know, Baylor Spears, about the vote tally in Wisconsin? How is it done? How long will it take?
So let's see. Earlier today, Madison, which is where Francesca Hong is from, was sort of tracking sort of a normal midterm election vote. Usually you see most turnout in, say, a presidential election year. I believe that it was, about 26,000 voters earlier today, and the vote has sort of, I think in the afternoon, we were seeing less voters than compared to our last spring election. And in terms of when we'll know, it's a little unclear. If it's super close, we may be waiting on Milwaukee. Typically we wait. You're not allowed to start processing absentee ballots until the day of. And so usually Milwaukee, the largest city in the state, takes a while. So it kind of depends on how close it's going to be.
And repeat what you said about voter turnout. What is it looking like this time around?
It's looking like earlier in the day, it was looking like it was a little kind of tracking the same as our spring elections, but it's nowhere near you usually see. I believe it was about 20% here in Madison, but not really tracking from where our, general elections, especially during like a presidential year, usually are.
You're at Francesca Hong's watch party there. What's the mood like?
Well, it's just getting going here. I believe that there is a line of supporters still. They just let media in, numerous and supporters starting to line up. Things are supposed to get going here around 7:30, and it's supposed to be there's supposed to be a DJ here. We're in a music hall in Francesca Hong's district that she represents in the state assembly. And I believe the supporters outside seem excited, ready to sort of celebrate with her. Hopefully, they're going to see her make it through this primary.
All right, Baylor Spears is the staff reporter with the Wisconsin Examiner. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Abby Turner, how is the electorate in Wisconsin different than other states?
Well, I think in other states we've seen this cycle. When you're looking at a Democratic primary, Wisconsin doesn't have the advantage of, having a safe blue seat. We saw a lot of these, congressional seats, these states kind of early on in this progressive wave. Safe blue seats, voters had a lot of opportunity to say, I want to pick who I want. I don't have to be worried about November. The general election is kind of run in the primary. Wisconsin Democrats don't have that advantage here. It's a very, very split state. Everyone I talk to say it's kind of 45% Republicans, 45% Democrats. You just need to win that, middle 10%. Baseline partisanship, this race is pretty much decided in that margin right there. So obviously you have a lot of Trump voters that he did really well with, rural, white, working class voters, but you have a lot of people in these suburbs as well, like where Hong is from.
All right, we are about 40 minutes away from the polls closing in the state of Wisconsin. Let's check in on South Carolina. The Associated Press has delivered one check mark tonight. Senator Darlene Graham, the sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who was appointed to fill his seat, and then decided to run in this election cycle because he was up for re-election. She has the one check mark tonight. Do you expect that because there's 39% of the vote in, she's not going to get to 50% and there'll be another check mark?
I don't think she's getting to 50%. I think Fry and Norman, as you can see, are split both around, 22% here. So she's advancing. I think this was a given that she was going to advance into the runoff. The challenge for her starts now. There has not been a ton of head-to-head polling between Graham and, Fry and Norman. She has a lot of ground to make up. Obviously, she was, mourning the death of her brother, and then she was thrust into Washington. These other candidates, yes, it has been a short runway here, but Graham has had an even shorter runway.
And there are not just these three candidates.
Yes.
There are five.
Yes. Right now I see Sanford's about like 14.5%, Mark Lynch around 5% here. So I think this is safe to say that this race for second place is virtually between Fry and Norman.
All right. So from the South Carolina, with almost 40% of the vote in, we'll come back and monitor that race and give you the latest throughout the night. Let's talk about the state of Minnesota. Chris is calling from Minneapolis on our line for Independence. Go ahead.
Hi, I was just calling because I moved up to Minneapolis from Iowa in February, and it was after Alex Pretty had been killed by CBP. And after what we saw with Metro Surge, how Angie Craig could still vote to fund that. I don't understand why anyone would support her and over Peggy Flanagan.
And this has been a central issue in this primary contest between these two candidates. Right, Chris?
Right. It's kind of been the hot button issue. It's what Peggy's been kind of drilling into. Why are senators are elected for 6 years. Is she going to get in Angie Craig if she's elected and then just continue to support this kind of stuff we saw?
Abby Turner.
Yeah, I think this is something that has been key to this race here. I think something that Flanagan has really hammered Craig over is her support for the Lake and Riley Act. That is something that Craig has come back and said, I regret that, but with how visual the impacts of Trump's federal immigration enforcement was on the ground in Minnesota, it is no surprise that this is the key issue tonight.
Let's talk a little bit more about this Senate race. Tina Smith decided to retire. It's an open seat. You have Congresswoman Angie Craig running against Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan for this seat. Listen to Angie Craig last week at Farm Fest talking about this race.
Republicans are saying out loud that they would like to run against you. They would not like to run against me. And when you talk about Republicans talking about the fraud issue, they're already running against you on fraud. They're already running against Keith Ellison on fraud. And I can tell you that Donald Trump has $300 million set aside. And Michelle Tafoya is going to pound the lieutenant governor every single day for her role in fraud. At the end of the day, she can't run from the fact that she was the #2 Democrat in the state of Minnesota, and again today is accepting no accountability for the fraud issues. Well, my initial support was 3 days into the Trump administration, and when I looked at the bill at the time, we had just allowed Donald Trump, who is an existential threat to this country, to come in part because voters' perception of America's open borders under the previous administration. As this Trump administration attacked our black and brown neighbors, it became absolutely clear that although they weren't using that bill in Operation Metro Surge, that any additional authority to the Trump administration was the wrong decision. And I've said that I regret it. But look.
Do you feel like you were deceived in what was the purpose of it?
Well, look, the bill was a bill that would allow detention of folks who commit crimes. That is not what the Trump administration has done. He said the worst of the worst. And the lieutenant governor, throughout the course of her entire campaign, has sat on the bleachers complaining about the one vote I took in 8 years. Where are her solutions to comprehensive immigration reform in this country? Because where I've been, while she's been in the bleachers, at the Whipple Center, standing in front of ICE. Where I've been is introducing articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem. Where I've been is down in Texas trying to get my constituents released from ICE detention and fighting ICE tooth and nail. Well, I'll start where I ended just then. This is an existential moment in time. The only way we stop Donald Trump and Republicans is by winning elections. I am in the best position to win this statewide election. I'm so proud to have Gwen Walz's endorsement, and that was her message this morning. I go everywhere. I talk to everyone. In my own district, I outperformed the top of the ticket by 8 percentage points in my last election. I like Peggy. We have been friends over the years from a political perspective. But the lieutenant governor has a specific vulnerability on fraud that Amy Klobuchar and I, at the top of the DFL ticket in 2026, do not have. At the end of the day, no one is coming to save us. Voters have to use their democracy in order to save democracy. I still believe in this country. We have to fight Trump. I know how to do that, but we also have to be able to reach across the aisle to get things done. And as an experienced leader ready to go on day one in the U.S. Senate, that is exactly what I will do, and I would be honored.
Congressman Angie Craig there in a Minneapolis Public Radio debate. Congresswoman vying for the Democratic nomination in that U.S. Senate contest in Minnesota. She was first elected to the House in 2019. She's a member of the Agriculture Committee, and she's been endorsed by Pete Buttigieg and Representatives Hakeem Jeffries, who is the Democratic leader, along with the former Speaker of the House and Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi. She is seen as the establishment candidate. Abby Turner.
Yes, I think one thing that was interesting that she had touched on in there is talking a lot about the social services fraud. It's hard to compare these two issues, the fraud and immigration. They're apples and oranges, I will say. But one thing that I've talked to with people on the ground in Minnesota is that the fraud plays more on a statewide scale when you're looking at the governor's race. But immigration is something that's hitting a lot harder when you're thinking about who you're going to send to Congress, the checks and balances on the federal government, the ones that deployed that Operation Metro Surge there.
Let's talk a little bit about her opponent in this primary contest, the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan.
Yes. She actually has the backing of Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, the backing of the state party, the DFL, the DLGA, the Lieutenant Governors Association arm with the Democrats, has spent for her. But her fundraising has not been as on par with Craig's here. I think in recent polling, it's been very narrow. But like we saw in Michigan last week, we saw, Abdul Assayed with, double-digit margins, and then the actual results were very, very close.
Let's listen to the Lieutenant Governor, who's campaigning, and today is the day when she finds out whether or not she gets the Democratic nod for the U.S. Senate seat. Here she is, also at that NPR debate.
Because we are in the fight of our lives right now for who has power in this country and who this country serves. The billionaires and the big corporations, or the rest of us? The many or the money? And friends, I was born just down the road, and I was raised in the community of St. Louis Park. Lou Park? No. I was raised by an amazing mom who did everything she could to provide a good life for me. But we needed a little help from Section 8, from child care assistance, and from food stamps. And my life taught me that big change doesn't happen because powerful people suddenly decide that they care. It happens because ordinary people organize, fight like hell, and refuse to give up. And that's what I've done, and that's what we've done together. You know, they said, and Senator Smith talked about this, they said that raising the minimum wage here in Minnesota and indexing it to inflation was too much and too ambitious. Well, we won. They said that paid family and medical leave would never happen. Well, we won. They said that feeding every public school student breakfast and lunch was too much. Well, friends, we won that too. Because in Minnesota, we get what we organize for. And I am running for the United States Senate because I want people to be able to afford the lives they want to live. And that's why I support Medicare for all. That's why I support universal child care. That's why I support a national paid family and medical leave program. It's why I support raising the federal minimum wage and indexing it to inflation. It's why I support letting farmers fix their own damn equipment. And it is why I support ripping ICE apart and holding them accountable. That's right. ICE out, friends. You know this. Friends.
Applause line there for Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor, and she was campaigning recently there at a rally in Minnesota. So ICE out, that got the crowd cheering, standing up and clapping.
The biggest applause. And I think that's something that has been very successful for her. You know, this was a federal issue. This was the Trump administration coming in. It was a very visible with the deaths of those 2 U.S. citizens. I think it's very hard right now for any member of Congress in Washington to make the jump to state office. We've seen that on the Republican side, and we're seeing on the Democratic side as well. Very unpopular. Washington, that's something that's dragging down Democrats here. And I think as well, this is, you know, a likely Democrat state, so not a solid Democrat state. But I think there is still a little wiggle room for Democratic primary voters to say, do I want someone that's been in Washington, or do I want someone that is making these promises?
There is a contest on the right as well, Republican primary for this U.S. Senate seat. Talk about the candidates running.
Yes, we have former sportscaster Michelle Tafoya. I would say she is the favorite here. She is the backing of the NRSC. She's really had a commanding lead in polling and fundraising, but she did not snag the state GOP endorsement. That went to former Navy SEAL Adam Schwartz, I think is how you pronounce his last name. But the state GOP here is pretty weak in terms of getting their endorsees across the line. So I don't think that's anything that's going to hold Michelle Tafoya up here.
Let's listen to Michelle Tafoya at Farm Fest in Minnesota recently.
Talking with beef producers while I was here, it's just a constant struggle of those stacking up of regulations. Like, I think a lot of people are okay. You say, okay, give me something finite. Give me something finite I have to deal with. Like, how much are you going to tax me? But oh, those regulations continue to stack up, and they sneak up on you, and suddenly you can't do what you want to do anymore. So I'll tell you one thing that won't work. Community public-run grocery stores like Mamdani is opening in New York. Those are not going to work. Okay, that is not the way. I just feel so strongly about supporting the agricultural community and your right to produce in a way that is legal, in a way that is clean and safe, and you are the ultimate conservationist. You don't need to be told how to do that. And in a way that allows you to expand domestically and overseas and prosper. That's it. That's why I'm running. I want to be there for you. I want to partner with you. I want to tell you something. I wasn't recruited to run for anything. I've been thinking about this for years, and
please show some respect.
That's nice. I've thought about this for years, and every candidate on this stage knows what it takes and how hard this is. Why would I choose to put myself, my family, on the line this way? Everyone goes through this stuff, and you know why I made that choice? So I could represent Minnesota better. We have not had great representations here in the state in St. Paul. Certainly they've let us down with the frauds. Certainly they have. And are we going to teach our kids? I have two, 20 and 17. Are we going to teach them that it's okay to allow fraud, to embarrass our taxpayers, to steal from the people who actually need it, and to hollow out programs because some people wanted your cash? They wanted your cash, they stole your cash, and some people let this happen. Do they deserve promotions? Do they deserve raises? Look, we can do so much better. And it starts with integrity. And it starts with being able to put yourself out there and say, I'm going to take the barbs, I don't care, because there are some basic, fundamental, common sense things in Minnesota that have to get straightened out. I do know the difference between a man and a woman. And men should not be playing in women's sports, period, the end. And we don't need to give 4-year-olds dolls so that they can interchange parts and try to figure out who they really are. Every child is born perfect, and I want to represent and partner with every one of you. That's why I'm running for Senate.
Michelle Tafoya at Farm Fest. She is facing off against two other Republican candidates vying for that U.S. Senate seat. One of them will get the Republican nomination tonight. So, Abby Turner, how did Michelle Tafoya go from sports to politics?
She has I think we talk about this a lot. We see a lot of, broadcasters, news people, very charismatic. They are able to easily make that jump. You saw right there, she's an excellent communicator. I think she's a very good recruit by the NRSC. I just don't think it's going to be Republicans' year in Minnesota. And it hasn't been for 20 years. They have not won a statewide race in 20 years in this state. It's interesting, Trump has not endorsed in this race. He endorsed in the governor's race for Mike Lindell. I think some people may have hoped that he would endorse Tafoya here instead of Lindell in the governor's race. But what I will say here is I think she's a very strong candidate, but it's a likely Democratic seat. The headwinds just aren't there for her. And I think a lot of these issues like the state social fraud, that's a state level issue. It's not a federal issue.
Is Minnesota more solidly blue these days than it has been in previous decades?
I would say it's getting there. I would say on a state level, yes. Statewide, absolutely. It gets a little interesting when you get down to the local level. You know, the state house here is split evenly. There is a power sharing agreement there. And the state Senate, I think Democrats have maybe a seat or two majority. So when you break it down at that level, very, very even state, but statewide, Republicans just not have found, success here. From the sources I have talked to on the ground, the state GOP is very fractured. They run into a lot of issues where they endorse candidates at their convention, but they can't get other candidates to bow out. So you're seeing some of this nasty infighting, all the way up until August. That's kind of distracting from maybe, a general election lane that they could have run months and weeks before.
Let's go to Connecticut, the Democratic primary for governor. Ned Lamont cruising to victory.
Yes, this was one I think people were looking at for another taste of the moderate versus progressivism, but this is one where I think his challenger, State Representative Josh Elliott, who ran to his left, just struggled to get off the ground. Elliott kind of launched his campaign last summer after New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's win. Just wasn't able to kind of grasp it. I think people had some issues with he wasn't really communicating this message as easily. In the final weeks, he actually tapped Fight Agency, which was the brains behind Mamdani's campaign, but it wasn't enough to make up ground here, and Lamont will be on a glide path to a third term.
We'll go to Barry, who's watching in Richmond, Virginia, on our line for Republicans. Thank you for joining us on this primary night. Go ahead.
Yes, I saw earlier about the race in Wisconsin, and I saw that our former governor in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, was there for
Tom Tiffany.
Is it?
Tom Tiffany, yes.
Yeah, Tiffany. Okay. So I have to say that Glenn Youngkin was an excellent governor for Virginia, and we're seeing the fallout with Spanberger now. And I'm concerned with these Democratic Socialist candidates that I have to say it's just a way of reducing what's really communism. For the way that they are presenting themselves. You look at Mamdani and this other guy, L something or other. I can't remember exactly.
Abdul Al-Sayed in
Yeah.
Michigan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very worrisome. I mean, Michigan, was it Flint, Michigan, or it's
Okay, Barry, I'm going to jump in. We'll take your point. So, Abby Turner, are Republicans eager to tap into fear like that?
I think so, and I think there's been a lot of discussion on the Democratic side. Francesca Hong could run the campaign that she's running today and not have the DSA label. Obviously, it's something that she's leaned into before this gubernatorial run, but there have been other progressive candidates that share some of the same ideals as her, expanding access to childcare, data center moratoriums, but they haven't said the words, DSA. And I think there's some concern that just that label tacking onto it is going to provide a very easy line of attack for Republicans to turn it more on a referendum of this movement nationally.
We want to show you Francesca Hung out on the campaign trail from yesterday on the eve of today's primary contest, talking to reporters. Here she is.
Why do you think AOC and Senator Bernie Sanders have not endorsed you?
I have so much respect for the senator and the congresswoman, and they are working tirelessly to make sure that we can flip Congress and the Senate and get Democrats wins in the midterms. I look forward to conversations with them about that too.
Does it show that they don't think you're able to win this battleground state?
A gubernatorial race is different from federal elections, and I think that we are focused on making sure to reach every single voter that we can up until those polls close, and that's what we're focusing on right now.
Come August 12th, if you win, how hard will unity be among Democrats looking ahead to November?
I look forward to being in community and building unity, and I I feel very confident that we'll be able to show folks that Democrats are coming together to make sure that Democrats win down and up the ballot this November.
What do you say to critics from within your own party who fear that if you win the primary, you'll drag down some of those down ballot Democrats?
Change can be scary, but when I get scared, I look to the voters who remind me every day that not only are we deserving of change, but they get to be a part of making that change. This election belongs to the voters, and we'll let the voters decide.
You just said this election is not about the tweets when you were talking to the canvassers earlier today, but it's gotten so much attention. I know you've acknowledged that in the past. What do you say to voters who see those comments and the back and forth about them and say it's either disqualifying or that in your clarification, you're trying to have it both ways?
What's disqualifying is Tom Tiffany still will not say who won the 2020 election. What's disqualifying is that he has voted to send tax dollars to forever wars, for gas prices going up, for grocery stores growing up. He doesn't care about Wisconsinites. He cares about the Trump administration, who he will put Trump first, and Wisconsin deserves a governor that will put Wisconsinites first.
What do you make of Governor Evers saying in recent days you have focused too much on the tweets and David Crowley is the one who's gotten things done?
You know, service industry workers, I'm proud to be one, and we're built different. I said we've held over 320 events since we started this campaign. We've locked in over 50,000 miles. Just in the last couple of days, we've done 24 cities in 4 days. I knew as a wild card, as an outsider, I would have to out-hustle folks. And what that has allowed us to do is actually listen to more voters, to meet more voters, and make sure that voters know that they have a fighter in Francesca Hong and our movement.
Thank you all.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Speaking of AOC, can I ask one more question? I'm not sure if you saw, but she commented something along the lines of that woke 1.0 was crazy back then in terms of what she put out. She seems to imply that the more modern woke mentality is more moderate. Do you agree with that?
I think more and more people across this state and this country, they are opening their eyes to an economy that is deeply rigged against working class people. So we're going to respond to make sure that we talk about the solutions and how we can deliver for working class people by taxing the ultra rich, ensure that we have a moratorium on data centers, that we're raising wages, fighting for universal child care, and that we fully fund our public schools. That's what we want more people to become aware to, that these things are possible, and our campaign, We Make Better Possible. Thanks.
Francesca Hung campaigning last night ahead of today's primary in Wisconsin. The Democratic Socialists of America member there. It's another left versus center for the Democratic Party tonight.
Yeah, and we've seen this, time and time again. I think we're still, 13 minutes out from polls close here. And so I think there's been a lot of discussion of, does polling overestimate Hong's lead here? She is polled pretty similarly to Crowley, some of the contenders that dropped out against Tom Tiffany here. But I think the question tonight is, does Crowley get a little bit closer? If it's very narrow between the two of them, I think that there's some concern that she may even lose some Democratic base here, that some Democrats aren't turning out from her. Will they come out in November for her?
All right, we are just a little over 10 minutes away from the polls closing in Wisconsin. We will see results start to come in at the top of the hour, and we will bring you those results and dig into them as we see them come in. You can also follow along if you go to cspan.org/results. In other primary contests tonight, there is a special primary held tonight in some of the Alabama House districts. Why some of the Alabama House districts?
So they redrew the congressional maps, but they didn't touch all the districts. They touched some of them to kind of break up some of these black majority areas. So we're looking at primaries in Alabama's 1st, 2nd, 6th, and 7th districts tonight. So that's about 4 of Alabama's 7 congressional districts. The one I'm keeping my eye on is Alabama's 2nd congressional district. This is with Democratic Representative Shamari Figures holding that seat there. Republicans redrew it to give them, kind of a double-digit advantage. It's going to be a lot for Figures to hold on to this. So Trump has endorsed State Representative Rhett Markey here. Looking now, there's not a lot of vote in, but he does seem to be having a commanding lead, about 7% of the vote in. He's 56% of the support here. So this will be the fight for Figueres' political life come November as Republicans look to draw him out of his seat.
And what does this mean for the majority in the House?
This is really hard. Democrats, I will say, did not win the redistricting fight this year. This was something that Republicans kickstarted. Democrats really struggled to make up these gains that Republicans made in, Texas, Florida. So Democrats are still favored to win the House, but I think given the redistricting that we saw mid-cycle this year, the margins that we're going to see are very narrow, and you're not going to see a huge Democratic wave that we have seen in past cycles.
Did the Alabama incumbents, the Democratic incumbents, did they decide to continue to run for re-election?
It's interesting. Figueres is out here doing it, but we've seen in some of these states where, you're split between two Figueres. I think Figueres was drawn out of his Mobile, Alabama, still running in this district here, but for some, your Congress primary, it's very hard to decide if you're going to run or not. If you want to go through a messy primary against a fellow representative, distract from a general election kind of prospects here as well.
Let's go to the land of 10,000 lakes. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, independent.
Yes.
Go ahead, Thomas, with your thoughts. Did you vote?
Of course I voted.
Okay.
I've been an independent my whole life. I'm an Irish Catholic. I don't fit neatly in any particular party, but I do believe that our current president is a felon, and I believe that the Republicans in the Senate and the House are enablers to allow him to enrich himself at the expense of the general population. And so, yes, I'm annoyed. As an independent, I voted for Republicans. I voted for Democrats. I grew up in Iowa. I went to law school and graduate school in Kansas. I served as a university president in Texas. And I can tell you that the independents are struck by the behavior of the Republicans. And the big, beautiful bill has reduced support for the working class in this country.
Okay, so Thomas, then who did you vote for in these primary contests?
I voted for Peggy Flanagan, but it was a close race. I think Angie Craig is very good, and I was Pete Buttigieg endorsed her, which meant a great deal to me. But at the end of the day, I thought that Peggy Flanagan's commitment to the progressive agenda was more compelling. I thought that Angie Craig, God love her, was running a campaign about what the other people could do, not what she could do, and I wasn't compelled by her statements.
Okay, so Thomas, what about the governor's race?
Well, okay, Amy Klobuchar is a harsh woman at times. She takes no prisoners. But Mike Lindell is a joke. And it's embarrassing that he's actually running for office. He's never, ever served in any way, and he's been found liable in a number of lawsuits. So, yes, I voted for Amy Klobuchar for governor, and I think she's going to go. She's going to be elected governor walking away.
Okay, Abby Turner.
I think that's a sentiment a lot of people are feeling about this governor's race. Look, Mike Lindell got this endorsement because of loyalty to Trump. This is someone that has been in Trump's orbit for a long time, but came to Trump's defense in 2020. It's rare that you see a state party kind of calling out the president, and that's exactly what we saw in Minnesota here. I think this has really come to characterize the infighting that we see in Minnesota in the Republican Party that has kind of plagued them in some of these statewide races. Now, I think with any of these nominees on the Republican ticket, Klobuchar is walking away with this race. The concern with having Lindell here is that with him at the top of the ticket, you could potentially, lose the state house, which is split, and lose even more seats in the state Senate, which Democrats have a narrow majority in.
Let's talk about Amy Klobuchar. First elected in 2007, entered the race after Governor Tim Walz dropped out in January. And she you'll recall, unsuccessfully ran for president in 2020. She made history when she was elected back in 2007, the first woman from Minnesota to serve in the U.S. Senate. Minnesota could make history again tonight because the parties have not nominated a woman, neither the Democrats or the Republicans, for governor in the state.
That is correct.
So history will be made possibly on both sides of the aisle.
And one thing I will say about this, and so we've talked about Mike Lindell, but we also have State House Speaker Lisa Demuth, who I will say my sources on the ground see her as the strongest person to run.
She's the Minnesota House Speaker.
Correct. Yes. Strongest person to run against Klobuchar here. She, obviously leads the state house, has been kind of on the forefront of the social services fraud. So if you want to bring up social services fraud as an issue on this state level race, she's the one that's going to be able to do it here.
All right. We'll go to Aaron, who's watching in Milwaukee, Democratic caller. Aaron, who'd you vote for?
I voted for David Crowley.
Okay. Tell us why.
Yeah, I voted just because of the groundwork he's put in, not just from this race, but as county executive for the past year or two, especially during we had historic flooding almost a year ago to the day, and just seeing him in the trenches and being familiar with him as county executive, I feel comfortable with voting for him. But I do see it as Hong being the leader coming out of this primary, which I don't have a huge problem with.
Aaron, do you think she can win in a general election if she were to get the nomination tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's hurting is the Trump endorsement is hurting Tiffany. He's not gaining anything with that. If anything, he's losing with that endorsement. And I think Hong is bringing on more undecided or non-voters than other elections. So that's where I see it there.
Okay. Abby, your take.
I think one thing that will work really well for Democrats here, if Hong is the nominee, if they're worried about this DSA label dragging him down, is they really need to hit Tiffany on, quote unquote, being a MAGA extremist. This is the language that is used in the ads that the DJ has started to run in Wisconsin, but they're only up with around $500,000. Tiffany has nearly $7 million of good ads on the air here. So this is a place where I think, we haven't really tested a candidate like Hong on winning some of these independent voters, maybe voters that are low propensity, only come out for Trump when he's on the presidential ballot. This could be a place where we discover that a candidate like Hong is actually being really successful here for Democrats, and that secret sauce that they need, since they've started to lose these voters post-2016.
All right. Well, we are watching primary results in 6 states tonight that will shape the races for the November elections. There on your screen is Ralph Norman in South Carolina, the Republican congressman. He ran for governor earlier. He did not win that primary contest. Now he decided to throw his hat in the ring to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Let's listen in.
Looks like we did it, folks. Looks like we did it. First of all, let me thank each one of you for taking the time to come out. I want to thank the ones that were in this race that had the courage to put their name on the line. Russell, the 2 Marks, Mark Sanford, Mark Lynch, and the others. I want to congratulate Darlene. This is a time to come together, folks. We've got to all coalesce, come together, because we have got some socialist Democrats we have got to beat. There's no way. The Democrat Party is not the party of the 60s and 70s and even 80s. This is a party that is intent on taking over this country. This is a party that's intent on taking over, having government take over everything. And folks, it's time for all of us to come together. I look forward to the next 2 weeks. I love campaigning. We're going to hit every part of the state and take our message. And, this is all about faith, family, and freedom. That's all. When Lane and I started this journey, first with the governor and then with this, how unexpected this was to have Lindsey Graham not here. He's a fixture. You thought he would be here. And that being said, it was, when you looked at the landscape, it was a short time frame to put together a campaign. But everybody came together for us. People really rallied, the work that was put in. And I just want to thank all my staff, both from Congress and that are here, and what they did, because it means a lot. You don't do this by yourself. So I'm excited for South Carolina. I'm excited for freedom. I'm excited to take another 2 weeks and just tell our message and go all over the state. It's so humbling to be here. And all of you play such a big part, so thank you for all your effort, your time, your tithe, your talent, and let's win this thing in a big way. I will be reaching out to all the other candidates and asking for their support. And I ask y'all for your prayers, and I ask you for another go-round that will be a fun time in the political arena here in South Carolina. So I will be glad to take any questions of the media if they have any. I hope we'll have a good many debates. I know we're scheduled a debate for Monday. I look forward to getting in all the issues. I look forward to hearing what her plan is, hear what her platform is, and doing the debates as we have been for the last, 3 weeks. So I look forward to that.
Congressman Norman, the race it's coming up quickly. I mean, we've got 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What do you want to say to voters tonight who maybe they supported someone else, they didn't support you? What's your message to them tonight?
Here's my message. I may not have been the first choice. I may not have been the second choice. I want to be the third and the fourth choice of everybody. I want everybody to unite and come with us because we've got the right message. I've got a great resume that I'm proud of. I really feel like that South Carolina and the country's at a tipping point. So I would tell people to let's get involved with this race. Let's help us take it to the next level. And we can do that.
Endorsement. Alan Wilson beat a Trump endorsed opponent. Your thoughts?
Well, I asked for the president's endorsement, didn't get it. But anybody would want the endorsement, but he chose who he did, and that's fine. South Carolina is going to decide the next senator. The governor's race prepared me, one, to get to meet the people in South Carolina. I was known in the 5th District, but I wasn't known in Charleston, in Hilton Head, Beaufort, parts of Greenville. What I enjoyed was going around the state. We met great people, and we met people who bought into our campaign. So that helped me a lot because this was such a short runway. But people, my name recognition was 80-some%. And as I went around, I got more encouraged because the crowds got bigger, the electricity was there, and it was just a great experience. It really was.
Congressman, how do you plan to draw a contrast with your now opponent, Senator Darlene Graham, and show voters how the two of you are different and why you're the better choice?
Well, I don't know where she stands on a lot of issues. I think that's where we'll find out, where she stand on pro-life. Where does she stand on the death penalty? Where will she stand on spending? So we'll get into the debate, which I welcome the debate. my record is an open book. You know what I've done. And I will continue that because I think that we're at a critical point because what really attracted me to this race, the Senate is malfunctioning and is where good bills go to die. And I will play a role in passing particularly the SAVE Act, which is verification that you are an American citizen before you vote. I will be laser focused on that. And I will be laser focused on calling the Senate out. They're on a 5-week vacation. That shouldn't happen. And so that's just one of the many things. The overall conservative platform of peace through strength, the American First agenda, I'm all into. President Trump has laid out a great framework that I will be a part of and will promote. And my record backs that up. I'd love to have another reconciliation package. I'd love to have another big, beautiful bill where we reform the tax code, where we work to cut regulations, where we empower the taxpayer. That's what that's about. And we'll debate those issues, and I'm sure there'll be some differences. But I welcome that. And I really trust the people of South Carolina to make the right call.
Face off at a debate. Is that in discussion yet?
Absolutely. I'm committed to a debate Monday. The sooner the better. And let's have them. It's fair for the people. We're getting ready to elect a person that's going to serve 6 years. 6 years. And the people in South Carolina need to know everything about where I stand and where she stands. And we will lay out those differences, which is a good thing.
Any other candidates tonight? Are you?
I just walked down. I'm getting ready to call every one of them. Mark Sanford, Mark Lynch, Russell Fry. That'll be the first call I make. And I will be calling President Trump, not tonight, but I will call him tomorrow. Thank y'all. Appreciate you coming out.
Congressman Ralph Norman addressing his supporters in South Carolina tonight. He is headed toward a runoff August 25th against Senator Darlene Graham, who is the sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham. The two of them will be vying for the Republican nomination about 2 weeks from now, Abby Turner. So tight turnaround, and you just heard Ralph Norman challenge her to a debate.
Yes, it'll be interesting. I think Graham obviously mourning the death of her brother, not really being in the public eye during that period, being thrust into Washington. I think voters have not really heard from her as much. Debates are a great place to do that. I think one area that's going to be really key in this runoff is what voters are going to turn out. We saw low turnout tonight compared to the primary. We're probably going to see even lower in the runoff. And the kinds of people that turn out in runoffs are going to be the most conservative, the most activist voters. And these are voters that are skeptical of Graham because they don't really know her as a politician. She said she wants to focus more on domestic issues versus her brother, but she hasn't really laid out where she stands in kind of the quintessential issues. And from what you just heard Norman say, there's some questions of where she stands on the death penalty, stuff like that. And so I think another thing I'm going to watch here in the next 2 weeks is, what does Trump do? He said he's going to call Trump.
Yes, the congressman, he's calling you tomorrow, Mr. President.
We'll see how that goes. I think the question for Trump here is, does he want to potentially lose on another endorsement? Or does he want to co-endorse with Norman, who is not the best friend of the president? If you remember, Norman endorsed Nikki Haley in 2024. So Trump has, I think, a hard decision to make here. And he's probably going to be weighing all of his options. He could turn out, the day before the runoff and be like, oh, go vote for both candidates. But
that's confusing.
Yeah. I mean, it's something he did in the gubernatorial runoff. I think he knows his odds in a lot of these places. And for him, I think he's understanding that some of this endorsement power is waning and he doesn't want to lose that clout. So I think he's weighing, do I want to lose on another endorsement or do I want to endorse someone that endorsed my competitor in 2024?
All right. Polls closed moments ago in Wisconsin and Minnesota. We're watching the governor's race in Wisconsin along with some House races. And then over in Minnesota, we are watching the primary contest for governor as well as the U.S. Senate in those two states. So polls closing just moments ago. Results will start coming in, and we'll dig into them here in just a minute. But I want to bring you to Connecticut. Ned Lamont earns the Democratic nod for a third term as Connecticut governor.
We'll look forward to carrying this battle into the fall with each and every one of you, Democrats in Connecticut, what we stand for. I want to give a shout out to Josh Elliott. He ran a feisty campaign, raised very important issues. Look forward to working together as one into this fall, what we can do together. Look, a lot of other parties around the country are shrinking. We have a big tent and we're expanding. That includes all the progressive, moderate, small business, labor, independents, even a few right-minded Republicans. Because we have one thing in mind: affordability and opportunity for all of the people of the state of Connecticut. And I know a lot of you are going through really tough times, working your tail off, one or two jobs, hard time getting by. The Trump economy is really bad. Look what it's done to the price of food. Look what it's done to the price of gasoline. Look what it's doing to the price of insurance. That's what it is about affordability. That's where we're stepping up. Make your life a little bit easier every day. Make sure you have food for your kids. Make sure they have free breakfast and lunch in our schools. Make sure we have affordable health care for all of our residents. And talk about affordability. You know, the Republicans are always saying, oh, it's just about taxes. We're going to eliminate the income tax. No, they raised the income tax, and they raised the income tax. We did just the opposite. We cut the income tax, not for millionaires. We cut the income tax for middle-class folks, just like everybody in this room. Eliminating the income tax for our working families, allowing you to keep it for what you earn, higher pay, keep working to earn. That's about affordability. Just one other thing. It's about opportunity as well. Affordability lets you to get by. Opportunity says, let's get ahead. I want each and every one of you and your kids and your grandchildren to know Connecticut is a state where you can get ahead with opportunity. It starts with the best education system in the country. That's true of almost all of our schools, but not all of our schools. We're not going to stop, Susan and myself, until all of our schools are the best. That's pre-K right through college, debt-free community college, debt-free state college. I want everybody to be able to achieve their dreams, not worry about the finances there. Give you that opportunity. We've started more new businesses in this state over the last few years than ever before. Businesses started mainly by women and people of color. Small businesses right on Main Street. Businesses allow you to start a career and allow you to grow a business and grow your wealth. That's what we're trying to do. Allow you to buy your first home. That's what I mean by opportunity. And just one other thing. I believe in the politics of addition, not subtraction. I believe that when it comes to political parties and winning political races, you're welcome in this cause. I also believe that, as you know, Dick mentioned, when it comes to our country and what we stand for. And if I'm particularly distraught about, I've got too many things to count, but one thing with Donald Trump, when he tells you, looks at a crowd like this and goes, you don't belong, and you don't belong, and you're not like me, and you should go home, go back to where you came from. That is not America, that is not Connecticut, and that is what is going to happen. We're so much better when we work together. So much better when we look out and care for each other. Remember, love thy neighbor. That was their message. And that's what's on the ballot this November. Look, I care. You know, Harry Truman once said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog. I don't agree with that. You have all been very close friends for a long time. We've been through a lot together over the last 7.5 years. The people behind you are extraordinary, making a difference for this state every day when it comes to affordability and opportunity. I could not do it with my friend Susan Weisswitz right here by my side.
Ned Lamont there, easily overcoming a primary challenge, vying to serve a third term as Connecticut governor.
Yes, it's interesting. I think, you know, we talk about this potential progressive wave, but in the same vein, we've seen progressives fall short, like we saw here tonight with Josh Elliott. we saw that, in Missouri's 1st congressional district, Representative Bell beat back a challenge from Cori Bush. We saw that in Hawaii as well with Ed Case. So I think this is just going to show that we're not seeing a full-on progressive wave. I think this is kind of isolated. In a state like Connecticut, it's going to be a safe Democratic seat. If Democrats there wanted a progressive pick, they could have had Josh Elliott.
Abby Turner is with us tonight. She's National Journal's The Hotline States and Governors correspondent, and all of you are included in this primary night in America, our coverage as well here on C-SPAN. If you're a Democrat, 202-748-8920. Republicans, 202-748-8921. Independents, 202-748-8922. And if you voted today, we want to hear from you at 202-748-8923. First results are coming in the Wisconsin governor's race here. We are watching this race very closely tonight in the Badger State. The polls closed at 9 p.m. Eastern Time in Minnesota. Here's the Democratic primary for governor with 1% in. David Crowley has a lead right now. This will change. What are you expecting, Abby Turner?
I think what we're expecting here is, I think Hong is the favorite, but I don't think her lead is going to be as big as it has been in polling. We saw that in Michigan last week. The Senate race was a lot closer than a lot of the polls had expected it to be. One place I'm looking at right now is Waukesha County. That is a suburb of Milwaukee, only around 10% of the vote in, but Crowley has around 44% of the vote in that county. This is a place where, Republican stronghold becoming more blue. If Crowley does really good here, it's a signal that moderate Democrats don't think Hong is electable on a general election scale.
David Crowley with the lead right now, pulling ahead. We'll see how these numbers change as obviously more votes are coming in. Their polls just closed. What do we know about Wisconsin and how they count votes?
They should be pretty good, I will say. I think earlier when you all had the reporter on, she said that Milwaukee could be a little slower. Obviously, that's going to be a place where who comes out of the Democratic primary is going to be very decisive. You have some of the most blue, liberal voters, probably more Hong supporters there. So we could be in a scenario where they go to, count absentee ballots, and it shifts a little bit more towards Hong. I think it remains to be seen if we'll know these results tonight, but I think we'll have at least a clearer picture of if she is running away with this primary or if it's a lot closer than polls had indicated.
Let's talk about these two candidates. Francisca Hong is Democratic Socialists of America. She's a member of that movement. David Crowley is the moderate establishment candidate.
I would say so. When you compare him to Hong, I think people have viewed him as more of a progressive county executive. One thing I will give to him, though, is covering, states, local governments, local elected officials. County executives have a lot of power. There's a lot of things that he can point to and say, I've done that. I know we had the caller earlier that talked about how he was really in the forefront of some flood responses there. On the campaign trail, he's really touted, bringing down the homeless rate there. So he has a lot of, I think, achievements under his belt. He just needs to levy that with some of the very lofty promises that Hong has made. I think his biggest ding tonight could be not hopping on board to support a moratorium for data centers.
In addition to Wisconsin, we are also watching its neighboring state, Minnesota. Max Nestorak, who is a deputy editor with the Minnesota Reformer, joins us now. Max, what is the latest from the Minnesota primary contests?
Well, we're just getting the first results. It's really going to be too soon to tell, and we may not even know today. This is a toss-up race, truly. There's not been a lot of reliable independent polling, but what we've seen is that this is a really close race.
Which race?
Between Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan and U.S. Representative Angie Craig for Senate. Peggy Flanagan is running on the progressive flank of the party, trying to ride this wave of progressive demands for unapologetic, uncompromising response to the second Trump administration, while Angie Craig, while a more moderate, coming from a competitive swing congressional district, has also been running on her record fighting Trump.
How would you describe the contest on the Democratic side, this primary contest between these two?
I think this contest really encapsulates this feud we've been seeing in the Democratic Party between the progressive wing and the more moderate, bipartisan-minded wing of the party. You see that in the endorsements. You have Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren lining up behind Peggy Flanagan, while Pete Buttigieg and other moderates supporting Angie Craig, Elisa Slotkin. So this is a similar fight like we saw play out in Michigan, but it's unclear if Flanagan will be as successful as Abdul Said in Michigan. You know, she's had a lot of grassroots support. She's called her campaign the many over the money. And indeed, Angie Craig has raised a ton of money. This is shaping up to be what's believed to be the most expensive primary in state history. But we'll just see. We'll just have to see whether that plays out, whether this grassroots enthusiasm for Medicare for all, for tearing ICE apart, for universal child care will beat Angie Craig, who's running on more moderate platform.
With less than 1% of the vote in Minnesota in this U.S. Senate Democratic primary, Angie Craig has a lead. Of course, it's way early. But how quickly will votes be counted in Minnesota, Max?
It can take a while. It certainly depends. I mean, it's possible that depending on how close this race is, we may not know the results tonight. But it really I couldn't say. It just depends on how the votes come in.
Where do these candidates need to do well in this state in order to get the check mark?
Well, the Twin Cities is really the center of population. You know, majority of the state lives in the Twin Cities metro area. That's also the Democratic stronghold, so that's really important. Angie Craig found herself in the unique position of kind of having to move left in running for statewide office. She had flipped a suburban congressional district from a Republican and then was reelected 3 times. Then some of the more moderate votes that she took came to haunt her in this race as she's trying to run for maybe a more liberal state as a whole. One of those is the Laken-Riley Act, which mandated the detention of undocumented immigrants accused of certain crimes. Craig has come out in the race and said she regrets taking that vote, especially in the light of Operation Metro Surge, you know, Trump's unprecedented immigration crackdown. So that certainly is an issue that's weighed heavily on Democratic primary voters. The other another important issue has been funding for Israel and weapons to Israel. Flanagan has blasted Craig for voting just recently against amendment that would have cut $3.3 billion in aid to Israel. So that's another issue that's important. But I should note that by and large, these candidates, even though there's this large battle happening in the party over the progressive or the moderates, like when you look at the actual votes and what comes up to vote in Congress, these women are probably not going to vote all that differently. Angie Craig has voted with Democrats more than 90% of the time in her 8 years in Congress. When you ask them about issues from you know, ICE to universal health care, to expanding the Supreme Court, you know, these are issues that they largely agree on, if not always in the degree, then at least in the direction. So it's a really pitched battle, but I do wonder how much difference voters will actually see depending on who goes to Congress.
Max Nestor, what are you watching in the governor's race?
Well, the Republican side is really interesting. We have as of a couple weeks ago, the CEO of MyPillow, he just stepped down, Mike Lindell, running against House Speaker Lisa Damath, as well as the GOP endorsed candidate Kendall Qualls, kind of a perennial candidate. And Lindell has Trump's endorsement, and so his odds seem favorable, despite kind of the chaotic character that he is and brings to the race. On the Democratic side, it really does feel like a coronation. It's Senator Amy Klobuchar, who there is one candidate, Kobe Lane, running in opposition, but really this feels like it's a coronation for Klobuchar.
What else are you watching for tonight in these Minnesota races?
So a few other races that are important is one is the 2nd Congressional District. This is the district that Angie Craig is leaving. We see another battle again between the progressive and the moderate wing. There's two progressives, Caleb Berg and Matt Little, running against a more moderate candidate, Matt Klein. And then there are some state local legislative races. All 201 seats will be on the ballot this fall, and Democrats are really hoping, with Amy Klobuchar at the top of the ticket, with voters' frustrations and anger towards the Trump administration, that this could propel them to win another trifecta. They just had one in 2023, which allowed them to pass one of the most sweeping progressive agendas in state history. You're talking paid family leave, raising pay for all sorts of workers, legalizing cannabis. So some of those races are going to be really critical in determining if Democrats are able to take back control of the legislature.
Max Nestorak is deputy editor with the Minnesota Reformer. Thank you for your insights tonight.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Abby Turner.
Yeah, I think these Minnesota races are going to be interesting tonight.
Let's actually, Abby, we'll pause because Mike Lindell is speaking right now. Let's listen in to what he has to say.
Here's what I said. I've been polling #1 in the real polls, not the poly market world, but in the real polls, I've been polling #1 since last August. And when I announced December, every poll up between 6 and 9 points. But here's the thing, and when the president endorsed me, it went up a couple, 3, 4, 5 points. But here's the big thing. With his endorsement, there was about 400,000 people that didn't get out to vote, that voted for Donald Trump in 2020 and 2024, that didn't vote in 2022. So with you do your polls and you have, they're feeling, maybe it's 1,000 people. Well, they're doing this 1,000 people. They don't. It's for me, it's how many voters I get out to vote. It skews the whole number. So I expect with his endorsement, the people that might not have even bothered to vote to get out and vote, and it could be. My guess is that the polls are a lot bigger than they would appear to be with his endorsement. Grant, I'll tell you this. The other people running would have loved his endorsement, and one of them even bragged about it when last November was Lisa Damath, who was the establishment's pick, and she said, and we're going to get the president's endorsement. And I'm going, I think I was at the White House, I'm going, oh really, that's weird.
Mike, if it's not you on the Republican side, who would you like to see on the ballot in November?
Yeah, Kendall Qualls. Lisa Damath hasn't done anything. She's been the Speaker of the House. This fraud, all this happened on her watch too. I don't care if she had an R before her name. It's that, she sits there and she goes, a year ago I came up with this committee for the fraud. Well, that was a year ago. They took $9 billion. I'm sorry, Lisa. You're not a good politician. You sit there and you get all these politicians going back and forth and nothing gets done. We need an outsider. Kendall would be that outsider besides myself. Because you've got to take a different view of things. We are elected for the people, not the other way around. You're elected, Amy Klobuchar gets in, she wants everybody to bow down to Amy, she's just another waltz, the same old political stuff. When I'm governor, you got the two parties, they can sit there when I bring them stuff and say, here's our budget, here's our thing we need to do, pass it. And if they don't pass it, which will help all people, I'm going to just reach out to the people. I'll be the most transparent governor you ever see. Not just the media, but the people will hear me daily. I'm gonna hide up in the Capitol or in the governor's man. I'm gonna be out there, as you know I have been for as long as I've been around. And I'm going to tell the people, hey, these guys aren't passing this, whether it's Republicans blocking it or Democrats. And I want everybody to ask them, they can go right to them and say, why aren't you passing this? It would help all of us. That's where I want to be at.
Well, Mike, you don't have the Republican Party, the state Republican Party. That was not their pick. Have you talked with the state Republican Party at all about what happens if you win the election? Will they rally behind you?
Well, Alex Plekish, you can look at my social media. He made a comment to CNN that was here that he absolutely will get behind Mike Lindell. But no, did they attack me ever since they got the president endorsement? Every single day, the party attacked me. From saying I wasn't a resident, them and the Star and Tribune, probably the worst two attacks by far. Star and Tribune, the worst paper in the United States, bar none. There's nothing worse than that. They started attacking, and then so did our own party, saying Mike's not a resident. Mike, he didn't register. He doesn't live here. I mean, this craziness. And I'm showing my pay stubs and my driver's license and the day I registered. The Star and Tribune, when they found out that I was registered, they didn't do an apology. They doubled down. They doubled down. Well, he's registered now, but he wasn't before. And I told him the passport, everything I had brought to Chaska when I registered, of course I'm registered. And then what does Alex do? Sends a letter to the Secretary of State, and he doubles down. Mike might not be, boy, if you vote for him, those Democrats are going to come after him, and he might not be eligible. The biggest lie, what they did is you talk about defamation and what they almost did to our state. To get through that, but I'm used to it, and the public's used to it. I've been attacked for 5 years because I want to secure our election. Amy Klobuchar and I were in lockstep in 2020. She wanted the machines gone and go to paper ballots. Amy and I, she was the loudest voice, louder than me. But as soon as she was in the movie Kill Chain, the documentary. Amy wanted the machines gone. She named them. So did all the Democrats. Now, when I get there after 2020, what did I do? I spent $80 million all over this country trying to secure our election. What did Amy do? She turned her back on that fraud, went out to Washington, brought back, $9 billion, and had it shipped off to Somalia. Amy, I'm sorry, you should follow the money. You're not a good steward of money. She's not a businessman, and she's a person.
Mike, no matter what the results are tonight, do you believe it will be a secure election and you'll abide by these results?
Here's what I'm going to tell you. I have people, my teams, there's 300,000 strong in every state. Right now, by having Edison Research that we're streaming it, if there's anything that we will see, whether I win or whoever wins, we will call it out and say, open these up. I'll give an example. Up in Duluth, the DOP in Duluth, at that convention, the voting machines went down. Do you remember the clickers? Are you all familiar? When that went down, what did they do? They didn't just say, oh, nothing to see here. What they did, the next day they said, in light of the machines not working, we're going to let Lisa Dameth run and break her oath. So if something would happen tonight that we would all see, I'll make it very transparent to everyone. If I won and I knew something happens, I will bring it out and call it out. Just like if Donald Trump in the 2024 election, the media asked me, Mike, do you think this election was fair? Your friend won. I said, here's what I said. I said, you all should be ashamed of yourself. I was telling this to ABC, NBC. I was out in Florida at the convention. And I said, you all know me. I don't trust any election ever done with a computer. And I said, we need to get rid of them, just like 132 other countries have done. So you're saying, am I going to contest this election? No, we're watching. If there's nothing that went on, if there's something went on, believe me, we know where to look, and we know what to show the people nowadays. And it would be up to you, the media, to actually say, "Wow, look at that." But you didn't do it 3 weeks ago when the president declassified the evidence of the machines, and Smartmatic is guilty, and Mike was right. Here in Minneapolis this week, one of you could break the story. I filed papers against them. This is the last. They were the genesis of all this in Venezuela. The CIA, the president dropped it, and some networks didn't even cover it. So, it's a long answer, but that's reality. My fight, I want to secure our elections for future generations, and this has been one of the biggest fights ever. Why couldn't we pass the Save America Act? I went to vote today, and you know what? I couldn't believe it. I walked in there to get my license. Oh, you don't need your driver's license. I go, What? I thought they were doing it because I'm running for governor. No, nobody needs a license. I said, are you kidding me? I was surprised like you wouldn't believe. Then I went over to vote, get my paper ballot, stick it in the machine. I go, that's it? Don't I get a copy? Don't I get to know what I voted for? No. Boom, it's into the abyss. No ID, no nothing. In Minnesota, you can vouch for 8 other people. I should have went and got a friends. I'm vouching for friends. This is crazy, our election process. I want to secure them. And you know what? When I fought for 5 years for this, you never heard me once bashing the Democrats or the administration when Biden was in. No, what I did, I went after uniparty Republicans that blocked me at every turn. When you talk about Robin Voss in Wisconsin, Brad Rassenberger in Georgia, red states like Arkansas, Alabama, South Dakota, Louisiana, they push back and we don't want our elections are just fine. It's disgusting.
Mike Lindell there talking to reporters in Minnesota, the MyPillow CEO, big supporter of President Trump and candidate for governor in Minnesota. 6% of the votes in, he's trailing right now over the Minnesota House Speaker.
Lisa Demuth.
Yeah.
This is who more Republicans, establishment Republicans wanted. Now Kendall Qualls, businessman, got the nod at the convention. But Demuth is, they believe she would be a stronger candidate for their down ballot candidates for state legislative. So I think it would certainly help other Republicans on the ticket. But Lisa Demuth would still start at a big disadvantage against Amy Klobuchar, now the official Democratic nominee in Minnesota. She is the most popular Democrat in the state. Democrats are excited about running with her atop the ticket. She's outperformed, presidential candidates. So this is a race that we rate as solid Democrat. I think that Lisa Demuth, though, would at least give Republicans a credible candidate, and she would run better with Republican Senate candidate Michelle Tafoya as well.
Abby Turner, do you expect that the percentage you're seeing right now stays about where it's at here in this primary contest?
I think it'll get closer. I think this is really going to be a race between, Demuth and Lindell. Qualls has the state GOP nod, but as we've seen, they aren't as influential in kind of swaying the electorate. Kind of a weak party when you look at state party apparatuses here. I think, the strategy here with Demuth is if she can secure the GOP nomination, it's going to be an uphill battle to the governorship, but she could be kind of a line of defense for some of these down ballot candidates in the state House and the state Senate. If Republicans can keep one of those chambers, whether it's the split in the House, maybe gain a few seats in the state Senate, they have kind of a firewall against Amy Klobuchar here. I think the concern is with Mike Lindell. Democrats are sweeping both those chambers.
All right, we're about 20 minutes away from the top of the hour. Wisconsin and Minnesota results are coming in. It's still very early, the first wave of results. We'll check back in on those races, but let's go to South Carolina. Mark Sanford is talking to supporters. He did not get a check mark next to his name tonight for the special Republican primary there to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Let's listen in.
I'd say the same with Sarah over there, who helped out over the years. I don't want Todd gave me all kinds of rides. We lifted, hopped in his vehicle and rode around big pieces of the state. I could go on with 100 other people who helped out remarkably because they believed, as I do, that our country's indeed at a tipping point and that we cannot continue to stack up debt as we have. We will add $1 trillion debt over the next 100 days, and it's going to have a profound ramification in every one of our lives. It's the unaddressed elephant in the room, if you will, in Washington, D.C. And so this campaign was built around that notion of what a farmer told me in the countryside of South Carolina. Let me get this right. We have a government that's spending money it doesn't have, and then going off and printing money that's not there. What's that do to the value of every dollar that you and I have? It diminishes it. And so indeed, you got a farmer in Saluda right now who's worried about how am I going to pay for, fertilizer and seeds. You got a small business person in Pickens County worried about, am I going to be able to afford the cost of goods? You got a carpenter in Myrtle Beach. I could go down the list, but a lot of people are struggling with this basic notion of affordability, and it's tied directly to the way in which Washington is spending money these days. It was our contention in this campaign that needs to be stopped if you're ultimately going to impact affordability in this country And if you're ultimately going to impact, frankly, our ability to sustain and reach the American dream. For too many people in America right now, that is slipping out of bounds. I mean, the average age of home ownership or purchase today is 59 years of age. 15 years ago, it was 39 years of age. Literally, in 15 years, it slid back 20. This thing is real. And so, again, though our campaign didn't make it, what I had briefly started to do prior to getting in was to start a 501c3 focused on the debt, the deficit, government spending, and its implications in young and old alike. It's remarkable to me that we will spend as much on interest payments this year as we will on national defense. It's remarkable to me that the interest is the fastest growing category of our federal spending. It's remarkable to me that the Social Security Trust Fund is destined to go bankrupt in 5.5 years, Medicare in 6.5 years. We are on an unsustainable course, and no civilization across the pages of time has been able to outrun math. And so, though I will not be able to tackle it as a U.S. Senator, I will work for everything that I'm worth through this nonprofit that we're going to start, trying to focus on bringing focus and attention to what I think is a threat to every one of our lives, to a threat to affordability, to a threat to the American way of life, and ultimately American civilization. And so one chapter closes, another one opens. And I look forward to that new chapter. And again, I'm most of all thankful for the people gathered here today, but frankly, literally thousands across South Carolina who helped us in this sort of uphill battle in an incredibly short race of 2+ weeks. I see you, Terry, right there. You, like so many others, have helped out, and I do appreciate all your efforts. And I'd call it quits with that. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Mark Sanford addressing his supporters tonight in that special South Carolina primary race. There you can see the check marks go to Darlene Graham and Ralph Norman. They're headed toward a runoff on August 25th because neither candidate got 50%. Let's go to Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar, who's running for governor, addressing supporters.
It takes to run a small business. So also here with me is my husband, John, right over here. And so many leaders, in addition to Kelly, Betty McCollum just walked in. More than crossed the river and came over here to the 3rd District. I know that Leader Aaron Murphy is here and Leader Zach Stevenson is here. Richard Karlblom is here. So many legislators, local officials, thank you, and thank you to Joe and our team. They're fantastic. And to the voters who are showing up in big numbers this year, thank you for putting your trust in me to be the next governor of the state of Minnesota. In Minnesota, trust is not given, it's earned. That trust comes with an expectation, which is results. Results that you can see and feel in your life. Results in making life more affordable, making our government work, and getting rid of the fraud. Results in expanding our economy with a growth agenda. Results that will transform our government. And yes, I will be a transformative governor.
Amy Klobuchar, the Democratic nominee for governor. Let's go to South Carolina. Darlene Graham is talking to supporters.
But it's difficult. Secondly, I want to say thank you. Thank you to God for carrying my family and me through some of the most challenging times we've ever had the past few weeks. It's been extremely difficult. Thank you to my husband, Larry, my 2 daughters, Emily and Nicole, and Kyle, my son-in-law, and my beautiful grandson, Copeland, had to leave because it was getting a little late for him, but they were here earlier. Thank you to my staff, my official Senate staff and my campaign team for standing by me and supporting me. I could not have gotten through the past few weeks without you. I want to thank President Trump. His steadfast support and his complete and total endorsement means so much to me. He knows that I will stand with him and fight for his agenda just like Lindsey did. I also want to thank my opponents, especially Russell Fry and Mark Sanford. They ran a good race. Most importantly, I want to thank the Republican voters of South Carolina for having confidence in me. I look forward to the next 2 weeks, meeting with you, listening to your concerns, and telling you more about me and my conservative values. I decided to answer the call to serve because South Carolina and President Trump need a leader who's tough, principled, and will fight to advance our conservative values in Washington. Lindsey and I grew up in one room in the back of a bar and liquor store where our parents worked long, hard hours to earn a living. That's where we learned a strong work ethic and the value of a dollar. From a young age, our parents taught us that you're not given anything in life, and no one owes you anything. If you want something, you work for it. That's how I've tried to live my life. I've spent my career serving the people of South Carolina. For the past 7 years, I led an agency dedicated to helping South Carolinians who are blind or visually impaired find employment, become more independent, and have the opportunity to provide for themselves and their families. I took a struggling agency and turned it into a national model. I never expected that career of service would lead me to the United States Senate. I certainly never expected it would happen under these circumstances. I've only been on the job in Washington for 3 weeks, and I've already passed a major piece of bipartisan legislation through the Senate that meant so much to Lindsey, the Russia sanctions bill, which I believe will end the bloodshed in Ukraine and keep Americans safer. I was also the deciding vote to confirm President Trump's Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche. Some politicians never get a major piece of their legislation passed, so I've already accomplished more in a few weeks than many do in decades. So I'm very proud of that. So when President Trump and others asked me to run for a full term in the Senate, I prayed hard about it. I knew I could not sit on the sidelines. That's not how Lindsey and I were raised. That's not who I am. I'm a fighter. Here's what South Carolinians should know about me. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm not a career politician. I know how families are struggling to make ends meet because I've been there too. I have 2 daughters with health problems, so I know what it feels like to have outrageous medical bills. I know there's not one business in the country that would let you put everything on credit like we do today with the federal budget. You have to show an ID to check out a library book, so why wouldn't you have to show an ID to vote? That's why the first bill I co-sponsored was the Save America Act. Joe Biden let 12 million illegal immigrants into this country. President Trump and I are going to walk them right back out. I believe that if you want to come to the United States, you do it legally, and if you want to stay here, you respect our American values. I support the right to life. I believe that every human life is sacred and deserves protection. I strongly support the Second Amendment. I believe gun control is how steady you hold your weapon. I'm a volleyball mom. I love watching my daughter play, and I know that boys have no place in girls' sports, especially not in the locker room. I've been accused of not being a politician. Guilty as charged. I will spend the next 2 weeks of this runoff meeting with voters and, unlike some politicians, listening to their concerns. Yes, listening to their concerns. This seat belongs to the people of South Carolina, and I will work hard to earn your vote. This runoff will be a sprint and a team effort, and I certainly can't do this alone. So I'm asking you to go to darlenegraham.com to join my campaign, Volunteer and contribute $5, $10. Again, that's DarleneGraham.com. If you didn't vote for me today, I will work to earn your vote in the runoff. Thank you for voting. Thank you so very much for your prayers. May God continue to bless this great state of South Carolina.
Darlene Graham there, headed for a runoff against Ralph Norman in 2 weeks. You heard her describe this as a sprint and that she needs supporters, even asking for money with 2 weeks to go. Abby Turner, does she need President Trump?
I think she's going to need President Trump. He's been very reluctant this cycle to kind of go out on the limb for his endorsees here. It's going to be a struggle for her in this runoff against Norman. As you saw in that speech, you know, she was kind of going through her very short but sweet resume that she's built over the last few weeks, you know, talking about what she's accomplished on Capitol Hill. And you kind of saw her saying, here's where I stand in this issue and this issue, because she is so unknown to so many of these voters. And I think that's the biggest disadvantage she has here against someone like Norman, who is, as he said in his speech, an open book.
Let's listen to what President Trump had to say earlier this evening. He was asked about this special South Carolina primary. Here's what he had to say.
Darlene Graham has made it to the runoff election.
I heard, good.
Carolina. What are you going to do to help her get over the finish line?
Well, she just called me to thank me for the endorsement, and it's great that she's doing so well, and she's a very good woman, and she's got good genetics because she's related to Lindsay, who's a real professional. So we'll see. I'm going to call her right now. She just called me 2 minutes ago. She won by how many points?
Well, not done yet, but she's nearly
She's definitely in a runoff, yeah. And that's good. That's what you want.
Will you campaign for her down in South Carolina?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
On the turkey
I mean, just so you understand, I like the other people in the race also. They're all Trump. I mean, they're all Trumpers, but, you know, I endorsed her. I think she's great. It's really in honor of her brother, and she's really a very smart woman. You know, Lindsay loved his sister. More than anything else, he would tell me about his sister, that she's just outstanding. He actually said she is better than him. That was hard for Lindsay to say. So she's out there. She's doing a great job.
President Trump earlier this evening weighing in on this special Senate primary, Republican primary to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Jessica Taylor, you heard him say it's good that we're going to a runoff, and he likes all the candidates.
I mean, they have all, except for Mark Sanford, who came in fourth, really emphasized their support for President Trump. So I think that you're seeing him hedging a little bit here. Again, Fry would have been the most pro-Trump candidate in contrast to Graham there. You know, does he still hold grudges against Norman for backing Nikki Haley? We'll see here, but I agree with Abby. You know, does he go there? Does he do a rally? Because again, his endorsement wasn't enough to lift Yvette into to winning that runoff. So this is going to be a really important 2-week stretch here, and I have to think that Norman probably has the edge here.
And he said, though, I thought we heard the president say he's going to campaign.
I think I heard that too, but I mean, what he's done for a lot of these candidates is he hosts a tele-rally, and I don't know how effective those are. I think what he really needs to do is boots on the ground for Graham. And if I am Darlene Graham and I hear the president say that, that's not a resounding, yes, I'm coming down to South Carolina for you.
All right. Well, let's check in on the marquee races that we're watching in Wisconsin and Minnesota. We'll start with the Badger State. We're watching this governor's race in Wisconsin. Before we go to results, Jessica Taylor, tee up this contest. Why are folks watching tonight? What happens in Wisconsin?
I think as goes Wisconsin, as goes the country in so many presidential races. And so this is a really key state for 2028. And that's why Democrats were really worried about Francesca Hong, a DSA-aligned candidate, potentially being their nominee here. Well, it might look like the late push to get David Crowley from the governor, the outgoing governor there, Tony Evers, might be working. We have a little over half of the vote in, and Crowley is leading statewide right now, 41% to Hong's about 40. So it's very, very close. But if I'm seeing some warning signs for Hong here, she's from Dane County there. She's only leading Crowley there by 4 points with about 58% of the vote in. We still have some of Milwaukee, which is going to be, he's winning in those wow counties that Abby talked about, those really suburban counties that really decide the state. She's doing better in rural areas. I'm not surprised that her anti-data center message really resonates there. Again, I think this could end up being a real barn burner. It's another polling miss in a way. But as we talked about earlier in the evening, there was such a rotating cast of characters. I think it was just hard to poll this race, and that didn't capture perhaps the really late push from Crowley and from Evers in particular.
And did you have more enthusiasm for Francesca Hong than you did for the other candidates?
I think so. I think that's something that you've seen, but a lot of this kind of progressive wave is playing out online. And I think one place that is always missed in a lot of these states in polling is black voters. That's something that Crowley's been able to turn out. I think that's something that as the field consolidates, we had former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes in this race as well. Now with Crowley in this race, I think he's really consolidating the black vote here. Again, a group that's usually hard to poll to capture their choices in polling. And I think you're seeing that in a lot of, Milwaukee, but some of these suburbs surrounding Milwaukee as well.
And what counties are you watching for right now? It's, as we said, a little more than 50% of the vote is in.
I'm looking right now at Waukesha County. They have about 70% of the vote in. This is one of the WOW counties, one of the W's in the WOW County. Crowley here is leading Hong by about 13%. He's doing very well in Waukesha and a lot of these counties in the Milwaukee suburbs. If you're Francesca Hong and you're doing really well in, Dane County, maybe a little bit, and the rural areas, I think that's, better than nothing, but she probably wanted to be doing a lot better in more of these suburban areas than she's doing right now.
No, I agree with Abby. I think this is, I do wonder if those, like I said, she was just kind of going on any TV show, and I think that she just came across very badly to some people. And this may be a place where that electability argument started to really resonate. I think if she'd have kind of kept her head down, run a more professional organization, Crowley was raising money. He was up with TV ads, making that electability argument, and emphasizing that Republicans were trying to spend because they wanted Hong. This may be sort of the reverse of what we saw last week, even though, again, that was very close. I think it shows that electability argument still matters nationwide and to swing voters in two of the most critical swing states in the country.
Francesca Hong garnered a lot of national attention for remarks that she made about holidays and her Democratic Socialists of America membership. David Crowley, backed by the outgoing governor. Let's listen to what he had to say at a recent campaign event.
We need a governor who doesn't just talk about problems. We need someone who's going to solve them. And that's what I've done my entire career. Now let's compare that to Tom Terrible Tiffany. Don't boo, vote. Well, we're fighting for working families each and every single day and making life more affordable. He is focused on dividing us. He supported some of the most restrictive abortion policies in our entire country. He voted against certifying the 2020 presidential election. And instead of bringing people together to solve problems, he has chosen partisan politics over the people of Wisconsin. I believe Wisconsin deserves something different. A governor who will fight for working families each and every single day. A governor who will lower costs for families. A governor who will fully fund our public schools. A governor who will make child care and health care more accessible and more affordable. We need a governor who will build an economy where every community, urban, suburban, and rural, has the opportunity to succeed. That's the Wisconsin I'm fighting for, y'all. So I'm asking you all, on on Tuesday, August 11th, to vote for David Crowley. If you've already voted, thank you. But let's make sure that we're calling our friends, we're calling our neighbors, and letting them know what's at stake during this election. Because we need to build a winning coalition that's going to send us to the mountaintop. Because at the end of the day, after we get through this August 11th primary, on August 12th, we need to come together. Because our ultimate goal is to make sure that we don't have a MAGA extremist occupying the governor's office here in the state of Wisconsin. And now it is, and I want to just be honest. Let's let me put these talking points up. You know, it has been an honor and a pleasure to have received the endorsement of our great governor, Governor Tony Evers. He has been the steady, calm strength we have needed for the past 8 years. He defeated Scott Walker. He protected our communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. He's been a fierce defender of our democracy. And he has been the best damn goalie Democrats could have had in the state of Wisconsin. Governor Evers has never stopped working for working families in this state. So please put your hands together for our great governor of the state of Wisconsin, Mr. Tony Evers, y'all.
David Crowley from this past Sunday in Madison campaigning, and David Crowley facing Francesca Hong in the Democratic primary for governor, hoping to replace Tony Evers in that contest. Jessica Taylor, 57% of the vote in. You saw it tighten here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a really fascinating result. Because again, I think polling was just, there was always this possibility that there could be this late surge for Crowley because he got back in just about 3 weeks ago. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing here. You know, again, Hong is running better in urban areas. In Eau Claire County, we have about 70% of the vote in, but she's only up 8 points. You know, again, you want to have big turnout in some of those urban areas. You know, we still don't have, we have almost all of Milwaukee County in, which of course that's where Crowley represents, but there's some, you know, that's a Hong base too, because there's such white progressives there that we're getting behind her. And Crowley's only, he has about 45% to her 44%. So it's very close. We could be in for a really late night with this one.
Okay, we'll hear from Jason, who's in Appleton, Wisconsin, on our line for Democrats. Jason, how did you vote?
Yeah, I voted for Crowley today.
And why? Why Crowley over Francesca Hong?
Well, I'll vote for Hong. I would vote for Hong in the general, but I'm concerned that maybe she's a little too out there. I was concerned to see that Sanders hadn't endorsed her, Evers hadn't endorsed her. I think one or two other people. I think that to me was kind of a flag, kind of a red flag. So I'm happy to see Crowley doing well, but 6,000 votes and 1%, we still got a ways to go.
Yeah, that's right, Jason.
Were you concerned about some of the comments she made in the past few days, the appearances she was making, talking about Thanksgiving and things like that?
The way I actually texted my mother and I said, she's a flip-flopper too, because, and I'm not saying she's a flip-flopper necessarily, but if you say those things, you've got to come up with a decent explanation, somewhat logical, and I don't think she did that. I just think she basically said like, oh, well, I love Thanksgiving now, or oh, I love Valentine's Day, or whatever.
Abby Turner.
Yeah, I think this is something that a lot of voters had going on their minds heading into the polls this week. She has a lot of damaging negatives that have come out already, and I think Crowley did a really good job at messaging that she is who Republicans want to run against. Mm-hmm. This is a critical swing state. This is a state that Democrats want to hold in 2028 with the presidency. They want to hold it given all concerns about, potential election interference from Republicans. I think Crowley in this final push did a really good job about laying out the stakes here, and it's something that voters listen to. But I mean, we're at 60% of the vote in, and he's only up by about a percentage point. So I can't write it off yet, but I will say he's performing a lot better than I think a lot of people would have expected him to.
And no surprise tonight, the presumptive nominee, Tom Tiffany, the congressman who's running for the Republican nod, crushing his opponent, gets the check mark for the Associated Press.
Yeah, again, Tiffany didn't have a real primary, so he didn't have to sort of be pulled to the right. He was able to focus on his general election message. His ads have really been some of the best of the campaign that I've seen. They've just been really smart, trying to portray him as an everyman, and I think they've been successful. And again, Francesca Hong didn't run any ads in this. You know, campaign mechanics can matter. And I think this is where you saw, even though David Crowley got back in very late, he had the governor's support. He was running a very functional campaign and was getting out there as much as he could. I mean, this would be quite the remarkable comeback for a candidate that wasn't even in the race a month ago.
So let's do some hypotheticals then. If it's Tom Tiffany versus Francesca Hong, how does this race go?
I think it's still a toss-up, but it's one that, that Tiffany has a very legitimate shot at winning. I think most national Democrats would be breathing a huge sigh of relief if David Crowley is their nominee. They like that matchup a lot better. Evers is a popular, outgoing governor. Wisconsin's still a very hard state, but Trump is underwater there. And I think Crowley can make the case, I'm an Evers Democrat. He's clearly been doing that. You've seen how the governor has been campaigning for him.
So Abby Turner, why does it matter for 2028?
As Jessica said, the way Wisconsin goes, the way the nation goes, critical swing state here. And I think a really big thing with Wisconsin is Republicans hold the state legislature. Like we've talked about in Minnesota tonight. On the flip side, concern that with Francesca Hong on the ballot, Democrats may not actually be able to flip some of those seats, maybe flip the chambers. That is on their mind this cycle. Has implications for things like redistricting. I think this for kind of Democrat strategy as well. If Crowley's the nominee, this seems like a place they have to do less cleanup. They can kind of invest their money elsewhere. They could look at potential flip opportunities to pump more money into, in Iowa and Ohio. They don't have to be as worried about defending their seat that they hold currently.
All right, let's talk to Akiva, who's in Clifton, New Jersey, on our line for Republicans. Are you watching these Wisconsin, Minnesota races?
Yes, absolutely, Greta. And I have two questions for Abby real quick. Before I do, I got to let both of you know, a lot of people didn't vote because last week there was a primary in multiple states, and it applies this week, this Tuesday. People didn't vote because they're on vacation. They really want to celebrate their vacation in Philly. But to my three brief questions, there's a Senate race in New Hampshire. New Hampshire doesn't get a lot of attention because it's small in size, small in population. But you have a former senator who was defeated a long time ago, 18 years ago. John E. Sununu got elected in 2002, got defeated in 2008. Now he's a former senator who was defeated, trying to get back into the Senate. Given that it's an open seat, wouldn't the Republicans be able to just steal it away come November? And second of three questions, Georgia has a Senate race. I predict that Georgia will revert back to doing what it's always done, elect Republicans to the Senate. What do you make of my prediction that Mike Collins will burrow his way to victory in November? And third and finally, Minnesota has a Senate race. Michelle Tafoya, she's going to be the Republican nominee. And what do you make of my prediction that as a first-time candidate, she will have a ton of appeal? She might even get a few Democrats and a lot of independents. What do you make of my prediction that Republicans will steal that Senate seat in Minnesota? Bye.
All right, Akiva, I love a good political junkie. Thank you for calling in.
These are great questions. Okay,
exactly.
I wrote them down, so I'll remember. I think New Hampshire is going to be interesting. I think this is a state where, Republicans find success. It's one of those unique states with Vermont. Republicans are able to kind of break away a little bit from the national party. I will say this is going towards Representative Chris Pappas. I think Democrats, when they look at their Senate map, this is one that they feel pretty good about. There are higher concern states here. Georgia, I think that was the prediction of the Senate will go to
Mike Collins.
Yes. I think that, John Ossoff is in such a strong position here. He has a massive war chest. Of the two races between Senate and governor here, I think the Senate seat is in a safer Democratic territory. Last one, Minnesota, I do agree with the analysis on Tafoya. I do think she has a ton of appeal. She, former sports broadcaster. We've talked about this a lot about people making the jump here. She has kind of the, characteristics. She's a very good speaker. She may pull a little bit, but I do think this is still going to the Democrats here, just given that Republicans haven't won statewide in Minnesota for 20 years.
It's President Trump that's the drag everywhere. I mean, New Hampshire is still at the federal level a blue state. And even though I think John E. Sununu was the best candidate they could have gotten, they could have gotten his brother, former Governor Chris Sununu, and that would have been the best candidate. So they got a Sununu, but maybe not the Sununu they wanted. So, I mean, this is one where Democrats can't take their eye off the ball here. And there is, Republicans are still spending here. So, but will that continue? Georgia, though, is the one that I have to disagree with the caller, because Republicans that I talk to are just very dismal on their chances there. That is a flip opportunity, but Michigan last week has become the top Republican pickup opportunity, especially with Abdul Al-Sayed as the nominee. So I think you're going to see a lot of money move away from Georgia. It's such an expensive state. Abby's right. The governor's race is a true toss-up. You have self-funder and Rick Jackson, and Keisha Lance Bottoms, the Democratic nominee. She has a lot of baggage from her time as former mayor of Atlanta, especially on crime. That we've seen very close polling here, but I think the Senate race is an uphill battle. Republicans do not feel good about Congressman Mike Collins there as their nominee. And then again, Minnesota, I think ICE and just the general environment, Tafoya in a different year and a different cycle, I think would have been a stellar nominee and could have put the seat really in play, but it's the environment in Minnesota and it's Donald Trump that has made this difficult.
Well, she easily won the GOP nod tonight, 18% of the vote in, and the Associated Press has already called this for her to run in the general election as the Republican nominee.
I think what she's going to have to figure out here is what are the issues to talk about. I think she's been someone that's touched a lot on the fraud. That clip that we had played earlier, that was something that she had talked about. But, the social services fraud is something that isn't really playing as well as Republicans hoped it would. When I was doing a story, I think in Minnesota back in, sometime January, February, right around the time that the 2 U.S. citizens were killed during the federal immigration enforcement. And Republican strategists have told me any sense that any candidate in Minnesota could run on social services fraud is being overshadowed because it is such a kind of public scene of Trump's administration here. So I think, for her to have kind of any footing here, she needs to figure out what are the issues to talk about that aren't going to be something that can really only be dealt with on a state level when you look at the social services fraud.
I want to swing back to New Hampshire, Jessica Taylor, because it's a fascinating primary there. Chris Pappas is saying to folks, don't take this seat for granted. Hello, I need some attention and some love up here. And the primary is coming up. And it is John Sununu versus Scott Brown. Remind our viewers.
Yeah, Scott Brown, former Massachusetts senator, ran in New Hampshire and lost in 2014, a very close race to Jeanne Shaheen, who is retiring here. Brown, even though Sununu has criticized Trump in the past, he has the president's endorsement. I don't expect this to be a close primary. There's some frustration with Republicans there in the state that Brown is still in the race, again, because they've gotten all behind Sununu. So, again, it's one worth watching. But with President Trump as unpopular as he is in New Hampshire, I just have a hard time seeing that I think Pappas is the favorite. But, again, it's a race that Democrats cannot take their eye off of.
All right, we've had an incumbent go down tonight. Representative John Larson, who was running for his 15th term in the U.S. House, loses to Luke Bronin in the 1st Congressional District in Connecticut.
It's interesting because I think this is, I want to say, maybe the 13th incumbent that has fallen this cycle. And a lot of the times that we've... 10th. Okay, thank you. We've seen a lot of this be fought on ideology, moderate versus progressive. This was one fought on age. This was all about, kind of gerontocracy. Who do we want to represent Democrats? Do we want an older face? Do we want a younger face? Who's going to communicate best with voters here? And I think that's ultimately what won Braun in the seat today.
Are you surprised by this, Jessica Taylor?
I actually believed at the outset of the cycle this wasn't going to be as much of an anti-incumbent year, and I was clearly wrong. I do think the age is mattering, and I think age is become a real focus here.
And John
especially
Larson is 78 years old.
Yes, I think especially after everything we saw President Biden go through, there has been a real reckoning in both parties, but especially in the Democratic Party about some of their aging lawmakers. So, again, at the outset of this cycle, Larson looked like he was pretty safe, but Broner has been a very strong fundraiser. He's gotten endorsements from some really key Democratic groups and things. So as we sit here now, I'm not surprised. If you'd have asked me 6 months ago, I did not see this coming.
Representative John Larson, 78 years old, first elected to the U.S. House in 1999, goes down this evening. The incumbent losing in this contest for the Democratic primary for the 1st Congressional District in Connecticut. We'll hear from Mark in Vero Beach, Florida, an independent. Mark, welcome to primary night.
I just take this primary in every election a thank you to the founding fathers for the unique participation of every American in our process of electing people. And I'm always depressed that I do not get to vote for Condoleezza Rice and Professor Thomas Sowell for the presidency of the United States and vice president.
All right, Mark, we'll go to Chipling in St. Paul, Minnesota on our line for Democrats. How did you vote in this primary?
I voted for Angie Craig today.
Okay. And you chose Angie Craig over Peggy Flanagan.
Yeah, I think Angie Craig is a better overall candidate. I think even though she has some money from AIPAC and these other organizations, it's fine. Peggy takes money under the table from AIPAC, and I think that's not very good at all. I also think Peggy hasn't really done much, done anything as a lieutenant governor. Gwen Wallace has set up more stuff than Peggy, and I think Angie's more of a fighter.
Okay. All right. In this contest, in the Democratic primary contest, with 16% of the vote in, and Peggy Flanagan has a slight lead over Angie Craig.
Yeah, I think it's too early to fully extrapolate anything. I mean, in the Twin Cities, we barely have anything in, but that's where I expect Flanagan to do better. Flanagan was ahead in most polling. There was one poll that did have this race in a statistical tie, but private Democratic polling I saw did show Flanagan leading. Again, this is interesting to me because it is a progressive versus moderate contest. It has those contours, but the race boiled down to so many different issues like fraud, like ICE, that were issues more really germane to Minnesota.
Yeah, let's listen to Angie Craig at the Minnesota Public Radio debate that was held recently, talking about some of the issues in this contest.
Republicans are saying out loud that they would like to run against you. They would not like to run against me. And when you talk about Republicans talking about the fraud issue, they're already running against you on fraud. They're already running against Keith Ellison on fraud. And I can tell you that Donald Trump has $300 million set aside. And Michelle Tafoya is going to pound the lieutenant governor every single day for her role in fraud. At the end of the day, she can't run from the fact that she was the #2 Democrat in the state of Minnesota, and again today is accepting no accountability for the fraud issues. Well, my initial support was 3 days into the Trump administration, and when I looked at the bill at the time, we had just allowed Donald Trump, who is an existential threat to this country, to come in part because voters' perception of America's open borders under the previous administration. As this Trump administration attacked our black and brown neighbors, it became absolutely clear that although they weren't using that bill in Operation Metro Surge, that any additional authority to the Trump administration was the wrong decision. And I've said that I regret it. But look,
do you feel like you were deceived in what was the purpose of it?
Well, look, the bill was a bill that would allow detention of folks who commit crimes. That is not what the Trump administration has done. He said the worst of the worst. And the lieutenant governor, throughout the course of her entire campaign, has sat on the bleachers complaining about the one vote I took in 8 years. Where are her solutions to comprehensive immigration reform in this country? Because where I've been, while she's been in the bleachers, at the Whipple Center, standing in front of ICE. Where I've been is introducing articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem. Where I've been is down in Texas trying to get my constituents released from ICE detention and fighting ICE tooth and nail. Well, I'll start where I ended just then. This is an existential moment in time. The only way we stop Donald Trump and Republicans is by winning elections. I am in the best position to win this statewide election. I'm so proud to have Gwen Walls' endorsement, and that was her message this morning. I go everywhere. I talk to everyone. In my own district, I outperformed the top of the ticket by 8 percentage points in my last election. I like Peggy. We have been friends over the years from a political perspective, but the lieutenant governor has a specific vulnerability on fraud that Amy Klobuchar and I, at the top of the DFL ticket, in 2026 do not have. At the end of the day, no one is coming to save us. Voters have to use their democracy in order to save democracy. I still believe in this country. We have to fight Trump. I know how to do that, but we also have to be able to reach across the aisle to get things done. And as an experienced leader ready to go on day one in the U.S. Senate, that is exactly what I will do. And I would.
Congresswoman Angie Craig facing off against the Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan for the U.S. Senate seat opened by the retirement of Tina Smith. This is where the vote stands right now, 16% in, and the Lieutenant Governor again with a slight lead, but this is very early on. ICE has been central to this contest and immigration enforcement. Listen to the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, at a recent rally with Bernie Sanders.
Because we are in the fight of our lives right now for who has power in this country and who this country serves. The billionaires and the big corporations or the rest of us. The many or the money. And friends, I was born just down the road and I was raised in the community of St. Louis Park. Lou Park? No. I was raised by an amazing mom who did everything she could to provide a good life for me. But we needed a little help from Section 8, from child care assistance, and from food stamps. And my life taught me that big change doesn't happen because powerful people suddenly decide that they care. It happens because ordinary people organize, fight like hell, and refuse to give up. And that's what I've done, and that's what we've done together. You know, they said, and Senator Smith talked about this, they said that raising the minimum wage here in Minnesota and indexing it to inflation was too much and too ambitious. Well, we won. They said that paid family and medical leave would never happen. Well, we won. They said that feeding every public school student breakfast and lunch was too much. Well, friends, we won that too. Because in Minnesota, we get what we organize for. And I am running for the United States Senate because I want people to be able to afford the lives they want to live. And that's why I support Medicare for all. That's why I support universal child care. That's why I support a national paid family and medical leave program. It's why I support raising the federal minimum wage and indexing it to inflation. It's why I support letting farmers fix their own damn equipment. And it is why I I support ripping ICE apart and holding them accountable. That's right. ICE out, friends. You know this. Friends.
Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan at a recent rally with Bernie Sanders tonight. She has a slight lead over Angie Craig, the Congresswoman. Again, Jessica Taylor, 21% of the vote in. This has been a pretty nasty primary contest.
It has been. I mean, again, you could see Craig there making the electability argument. She has won. She flipped a House seat from red to blue in 2018. There's a lot of similarities to Haley Stevens last week in Michigan that also flipped that House seat in 2018. And also, Craig has had the spending advantage on air, according to our friends at Ad Impact. Craig had a super PAC backing her, North Star Dawn, between them and other outside groups, almost $20 million in outside spending between her and her campaign, about $4.5 million for Flanagan. The Democratic Lieutenant Governors Association has spent heavily for her here as well. Craig has attacked, Flanagan has talked about not taking corporate PAC donations, but Craig has attacked her for some of the donations that the DLGA took. It's been hard for lieutenant governors to move up in some of these races they've run for, particularly Senate, but they had another big win earlier this year in Illinois when the lieutenant governor there also overcame a big spending disadvantage over Raja Krishnamurthy. So she was able to win in that race as well. So this has been a pretty good cycle for Democratic lieutenant governors looking to move up.
All right. We are continuing to watch that race in Minnesota, the Democratic primary there. Also a tight race developing in the Wisconsin governor's race on the side for Democrats. And we're watching that very closely as well. What are you seeing, Abby Turner?
We have about 70% of the votes in, and Crowley leads Hong by 0.1%.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a nail biter tonight. I don't think we're going to know this for tonight, tomorrow. It could be a little while. I think for Hong, though, I think she's reaching a little bit of a ceiling here. Areas where she was expected to perform well, you're looking at Eau Claire area, they've kind of all reported. I think for Crowley, he's probably feeling a little better. He has a little bit more wiggle room here in some of the suburbs. We really have not gotten a lot of places outside of Madison as well, besides Dane County. So if we're looking at some of the suburban trends outside of Milwaukee, got to see if those kind of carry over to the counties surrounding Madison.
And is it county by county? Is it showing a tight race as well?
Yeah, I mean, so Milwaukee County, Crowley has about a 1-point edge over Hong. Madison, she's extended her lead there. That is coming in better for her than it was earlier. She has a 7-point edge there with about 90% of the votes in. We have about 84% of the vote in Milwaukee. In Waukesha, 86% of the vote in. Crowley is winning there by 11 points. This could really come down to absentee ballots. And some of these absentee ballots were cast when Crowley was not in the race. So were people voting for him anyway? Were they just sort of, this is just, like I said, this has just been such a topsy-turvy race that, again, at this time a month ago, Crowley was not in the race. He had dropped out and endorsed another candidate. So that's just how crazy this has been. I think if this race had one more week, especially with looking at the media that Francesca Hong was doing and some of the negative storylines, he clearly has the trajectory and the upswing. There's been a really impressive late close from him, but was it too little too late?
And how will we know? When will we know?
I would not stay up if you want to get sleep tonight. I might stay up, we'll see, but it could come down to those absentee votes, and we don't know when we're going to get some of those in.
All right. Let's hear from Sam, who's in New York, an honor line for Democrats. Sam, thanks for watching tonight, primary night on C-SPAN. Your thoughts?
I'd like to have somebody, either in the media or the Republicans, who are tossing around the words socialism and communism. None of these Democrats are socialists. They use that buzzword, but socialism, as you know, is an economic policy under which the government controls the means of production. That's not what Memdani was running on. They just running further to the left than traditional Democrats do. And the only real socialist in our government is our president, who has taken pieces of public corporations and included them in the assets of the government.
All right, Sam, we'll get to your thoughts here in just a minute, but Lisa Damith, who is the Minnesota House of Representatives Speaker, running for governor in the GOP primary, is talking right now.
Across the state, people are motivated, and what this tells us is Minnesotans are ready for a meaningful change here in the state. We have to shift directions and make things better for people.
Well, tell me why you think you're the right person to do that, because you did not get the endorsement of the state GOP, nor did you get the endorsement from President Trump. The other candidates in this race did. So why do you believe you're the right person to pick?
I've had the opportunity of serving as Speaker of the House for the last 2 years, and I've been in the legislature for 4 terms. That experience and what I have learned in that process has taught me much about how our government operates, where we need to make changes, specifically fraud, putting extra internal controls and protecting and respecting Minnesota taxpayer dollars. But I have also learned to work across the aisle in an exactly tied House. That has been what we've done. Everything that we did over these last 2 years has been bipartisan. Minnesotans are looking for, yes, the change and respect with their taxpayer dollars, ending fraud, but they also want to know that me, as their next governor, will be able to work together with people, having a different trajectory and requiring accountability within each one of the agencies. Minnesotans are ready for that change.
And we know that Republicans haven't won a statewide seat
That's right.
here in the state in a very long time. We also know that Amy Klobuchar just secured the Democratic nomination for the governor's race in the fall. How do you think you would be able to beat someone like Amy Klobuchar in the midterms?
Amy Klobuchar has been running for office and in office for 30 years. We need a definite change here in the state of Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar as a governor would just be a Tim Walz second, a 2.0 Tim Walz really is what she would end up being. Like I said, there has to be some accountability. Amy Klobuchar has never protected our taxpayer dollars. Not once did she talk about fraud until she started running for governor. Her eyes have been on either being president or working in Washington. She hasn't protected those taxpayer dollars. She supported President Biden and opened our borders and made our country and our state less safe. She is not what Minnesota needs, and that is very, very clear and evident.
So let's say you do secure the primary tonight. What happens between now and November for you?
So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we talk to Minnesotans as we have been across the state. Not just to say that I'm talking to people or I'll make a quick stop, but I want to hear what is on the minds of Minnesotans. I had an opportunity to be down at Farm Fest last week, hearing from those that support really the world with food, but those in agriculture. What we need is change and making things better for Minnesota. I've always supported those in ag. I support businesses of all size. People are asking for less mandates, better permitting time so it's shorter, less restrictions, keeping everyone safe. The other thing that is really a shame to admit, but our state, where we were known for excellent educational outcomes, only half of our kids can read at grade level. That has been falling. I am ready to lead this state and turn things around in the way that Minnesotans absolutely need.
We just came from Mike Lindell's event, and he talked a bit about some of his concerns around election security. Do you believe we have safe and secure elections here?
You know, I really believe that the work that's being done at the polls tonight and has been done, that they are working very hard. I would say, though, at a minimum, going forward, I look forward to passing, at a minimum, voter ID. But I believe that the elections and the results that we'll see out of the work today is going to be as secure as possible.
Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
I'll grab that mic from you.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Lisa Damith there, who is the Minnesota House of Representatives Speaker. She's facing off against Mike Lindell for the GOP nomination for governor in the state of Minnesota. This has not been called. 25% of the vote is in this race. They seem to be behind on counting for this race than they are in others.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, but I think that this is very good news for Republicans that Lisa Damith is winning here and beating Mike Lindell. As Abby was talking about, the state legislative races are really key to Republicans here. And so she is a very credible candidate that can run along with Michelle Tafoya. Again, Republicans have a really strong ticket here in Minnesota. If the environment were not so dismal for them, especially after President Trump's Operation Metro Surge, Minnesota really might be in play. But I think that when it comes down, immigration is just overshadowing everything, including the fraud that Republicans hoped would make this more winnable.
Amy Klobuchar, though, won the nomination on the Democratic side easily tonight. So, I mean, is she a formidable candidate for Republicans?
I think they hope to tie her more to the fraud. And that was something when she Tim Walz, drops his reelection bid, she steps up. It was kind of one of the first things that she addressed. She had to hit it head on, kind of lay where she's standing. And she said, we could have done better. Here's what I'm going to do as governor. So I think that really kind of covered her bases right there to say, if Republicans try to attack her, be like, look, I was serving in Washington. This is the state issue, but here's where I stand. I've condemned it. Here's my plan to go forward. And I think she's done a good job about that. That has kind of been able to kind of buffer any Republican attacks that will come.
Let's hear what she had to say earlier this evening when she talked to her supporters at the watch party.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ben. We're so proud of our future Lieutenant Governor, the former mayor of Fergus Falls, who knows what it takes to lead in rural Minnesota. He knows what it takes to raise a family in a small town. Tessa's right over there. Thank you. And he knows what it takes to run a small business. So also here with me is my husband, John, right over here. And so many leaders. In addition to Kelly, Betty McCollum just walked in. More than crossed the river and came over here to the 3rd District. I know that Leader Aaron Murphy is here and Leader Zach Stevenson is here. Richard Karlblom is here. So many legislators, local officials, thank you. And thank you to Joe and our team. They're fantastic. And to the voters who are showing up in big numbers this year, thank you for putting your trust in me to be the next governor of the state of Minnesota. In Minnesota, trust is not given. It's earned. That trust comes with an expectation, which is results. Results that you can see and feel in your life. Results in making life more affordable, making our government work, and getting rid of the fraud. Results in expanding our economy with a growth agenda. Results that will transform our government. And yes, I will be a transformative governor. You expect leaders to deliver results, not excuses. And you are rightfully tired of this partisan theater and the punchlines. I will deliver those results. I've done it as senator, and I will do it as your governor. Now, we know we have headwinds coming at us every single day. Trump's tariffs eating away at people's paychecks, the massive cuts to health care, the mess in Washington. Those headwinds may well be a constant, but they can never be an excuse. We need a governor who is going to put Minnesotans first and not be a rubber stamp of Donald Trump. I am running for the people of Minnesota, and I'm going to govern for the people of Minnesota. While the Republicans are still deciding their nominee, it has appeared for a while that this race has come down to 2 candidates. Mike Lindell, as you know, is Donald Trump's guy. he got Trump's complete and total endorsement. Mike Lindell may be Donald Trump's choice, but I want to be Minnesota's choice. And Lisa Dameth, you may have seen her advertisements recently, lots of them. Well, most of those ads are paid for by one person, one man, one billionaire who doesn't even live in Minnesota, a Wisconsin billionaire who is one of Donald Trump's biggest donors. He has spent $3 million already flooding our state for her. And who does this guy want? He wants her in the governor's office. And while she may be this Wisconsin billionaire's choice, I want to be Minnesota's choice for governor. When my opponents were asked to name one place where they disagreed with Donald Trump, they couldn't do it. They won't speak out against the tariffs that are raising everyone's costs. They won't speak out against the Medicaid cuts that are hitting our hospitals, particularly in the rural areas. They won't support extending the health insurance premium tax credits that Donald Trump let expire. They won't speak out against the war in Iran, which is costing us in lives, in treasure, and yes, in costs. And Trump keeps telling us it will end. So I voted, along with Tina, to end Trump's war. I put my name on that vote. But my opponents can't even find the courage to stand up to the president and say this is wrong, and this has to stop. I plan to do, and I pledge to do, my job without fear or favor. I will be fearless for Minnesota. I will stand my ground for Minnesota, and I will be accountable to Minnesota. I'm going to be focused on you. I'm focused on lowering your health care costs, on making sure you can buy a home, and on making it easier to start a business or raise a family, on making your government work for you. And I will measure our success as a state, not in that political theater. I will measure our success as a state by results. My goal is to keep what's right and fix what's wrong. That's why I'll launch on day one a top-to-bottom audit of state government to root out the waste and the abuse and the fraud, to cut red tape so we can build 100,000 more homes. So we can get student achievement up and screen time in the classroom down. So we can double the number of apprenticeships in healthcare and manufacturing and construction and more, and take on rising costs by reducing healthcare premiums. As your governor, I'll create a state tax credit for healthcare premiums if Washington won't act. 10 states have already run tax credits like this. New Mexico acted last year, and as a result, it was the only state where more people got covered through the marketplace instead of people losing their coverage. After tonight, Minnesotans are going to be presented with a choice. It's a choice about the future of our state. If my opponents want to devote their energy to attacks instead of solutions, let them. If they want to avoid making tough calls because the president might not like what they say, let them. That's not what I'm going to do. Earlier this year, I met with a 14-year-old girl who was part of a middle school class from St. Paul who came to visit our office. And it was right after it had been announced that Minnesota was getting the Profile and Courage Award, the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award. And I said to her, you know, that Profile and Courage Award, that didn't go to an elected official. It went to the people. And then she stood as tall, as short as she was, as tall as she could, this little 14-year-old girl, and she said, now I know, she said, that award went to me. that award went to me. She wasn't just proud of our state and how her people had marched 50,000 strong in 10 below zero weather and brought food to strangers and kids to school. She saw that it makes a difference when people stand up. She saw that if we want to see change in the world, we have to be ready to make it happen ourselves. You see, if you want to see that change, we truly have to do it ourselves. So tonight, we are here standing up. Democrats, independents, and yes, some Republicans, ready to make that change. For the people who work in the kitchens and the firehouses, on farms and factory floors, in classrooms and emergency rooms, we are standing up for every parent who wants a better world for their kids, for everyone who understands that immigrants don't diminish America, they are America. For the young, for the young people trying to pay their bills, find a good job, or buy their first home. For the seniors who deserve a dignified and affordable retirement after a lifetime of hard work. For the union members who are out there leading the way for our workers. For the farmers fueling our nation and keeping our rural economy strong. For the businesses, entrepreneurs, and innovators changing the world every day. For those builders and workers who show up on the job with resilience and understand, like I do, that when unions are strong, our economy is strong. And when our economy is strong, America is strong. And to the independents and moderate Republicans who didn't vote for those high costs, for the chaos, and for the corruption that we're seeing coming out of Donald Trump's White House, they didn't vote for the fraud. And I want to tell them right now, I will be the governor for you. To the people of Minnesota, I say this: I'm not afraid to take on the hard fights, especially when those fights are for you, and I have a record of winning hard fights. My colleague Tina Smith said to me once that patience is a virtue, but it's a virtue I don't have. So when prescription drugs are through the roof and people are rationing their insulin, we don't wait, we change it. When it takes too long to build a house and landlords are using algorithms to drive up rental prices, we don't wait, we change it. And when Donald Trump raises health care costs and threatens our democracy, we don't wait, we win an election. Minnesota, I don't like the status quo. The status quo doesn't bring down costs, it doesn't build homes, it doesn't create jobs, but we can. Our state built this nation. We do big things. We brought the world everything from the pacemaker to the Post-it note. But we will not rest on our laurels. You all know my story. My grandpa worked 1,500 feet underground in the mines up in Ely. He saved money in a coffee can in the basement so that my dad could go to a 2-year community college. My dad went on from that hardscrabble mining town to be a beloved journalist covering the Vikings. And I know they made a quarterback announcement today. That's too controversial to debate. My mom, a proud union member, was a teacher, and she taught 2nd grade until she was 70 years old. I still have people come up to me on the street and tell me that she was their favorite teacher. So I stand before you today as the granddaughter of an iron ore miner who never got to graduate from high school, as the daughter of a teacher and a newspaper man, and as the first woman elected to the United States Senate from the state of Minnesota. And with your support, the first woman elected to the governor of Minnesota. Our past has made us who we are, but our future is up to us. I want to build that future together. Tonight, I'm asking you not to look away, but to look at each other. I'm asking you not to look down, but to look up to the North Star and be stewards of good. To pursue good, we must believe that good will prevail. I believe that good will prevail. I believe in our future. I believe in Minnesota, and I know you do too. So let's get to work, let's get this done, and let's win this election. Thank you, everyone.
Senator Amy Klobuchar earlier tonight addressing her supporters. She now wants to lead the state as governor. Jessica Taylor, she has the check mark from the Associated Press. Not surprised here. She was the presumptive nominee. What does this race look like for her in the general election?
This is a solid Democratic seat. She should win this pretty easily. But again, she's probably sweating a little bit more now that she's going to go up against Lisa Demuth. But I think still the environment helps her. She's removed from the fraud scandal. She was in Washington, so she can talk about that and things. I mean, this could have been a very different looking race had Walz continued on and run for re-election. This could have been a very competitive general election.
And you believe it's Lisa Demuth who will be the nominee?
It does appear that way. I don't know if the Associated Press has officially called it yet. They have not. But she is up with 40% of the vote in. She's up 45% to 32% for Mike Lindell.
Oh, Abby Turner?
Yeah, I think definitely gets a little feistier for Klobuchar here with Demuth potentially as the nominee here, but she's still doing very strong. Demuth had strong fundraising out of the Republican field, but Klobuchar raised $10 million in this virtually uncontested Democratic primary. She is walking into this general election with a major cash advantage.
Let's check in on that Wisconsin governor's race. It's a tight race that is unfolding tonight in the Badger State. For the Democratic nomination to run as governor in the general election, we have Francesca Hong versus David Crowley, the progressive Democratic Socialist of America candidate versus the establishment, more moderate David Crowley. 77% of the vote in. Abby Turner, walk us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah, this is going to be razor thin. We will not know these results tonight. But what I am seeing is a lot of the areas that Francesca Hong is doing good. They're almost all reported, and they're very small populations. Granted, you have Madison and the Green Bay area is a little larger, but there's a lot of outstanding vote in the Milwaukee suburbs area. Mm-hmm. That's a place that Crowley has been doing really strong. So right now, I want to say they're separated by less than 2,000 votes. His lead could expand a little bit as votes from those kind of higher population areas trickle in.
Did she do as well as she needed to do in these rural areas that you're looking at?
No, not entirely. She is, just kind of bouncing around the counties here in single digits above Crowley. And again, some of these rural areas, though, like she could do really well, but she needs numbers. She doesn't, she needs lots of votes here. If she's holding a 50% kind of threshold in some of these counties, but they only have 5,000 votes, that's not really going to help her on a statewide basis. I think I'm looking at Waukesha and Washington outside of Milwaukee. Waukesha has about 86% of the vote counted. Crowley leads there with about 44%. Washington is 77% of the vote counted, and Crowley leads with also about 44% there. So he has a little bit of wiggle room here because these are higher population areas than maybe some of the rural areas that Hong had found some success in.
Jessica?
Yeah, it's about 1,400 votes per my back of the envelope math. I mean, and it's constantly changing. I think that, again, we may not know some of these absentee votes. I think it comes down to when were these absentee votes cast? Were they cast in the past week or were they cast last month when Crowley wasn't even in the race? It could be that close.
And so the prediction is we don't know tonight. We might not even know tomorrow.
Yeah, again, we'll see when those come in. But, so you have Kenosha that is more liberal, that Hong is winning. There's about 7% of the vote left there. But again, there's about a quarter of the vote still out in Milwaukee County There's about 14% of the vote still out in Waukesha. In Washington County, there's 23% of the vote, and those are all areas where Crowley is doing well. I mean, this would just be a remarkable comeback story were he able to pull it off, but it is going to be razor thin.
For our viewers, go to our website, cspan.org/results. You can go county by county and watch as we continue to see a nail biter here in this Democratic primary for the governor's race. Whoever gets the nomination, who will they face in the general election?
They're going to face Republican Tom Tiffany here. Republicans see this state, which is currently held by Democrats, as one of their best pickup opportunities. Tiffany, very conservative member of Congress here, but he is someone who, kind of running unopposed in this primary, has been able to repaint himself. He's up on air with nearly $7 million of ads, and he's kind of striking this folksy Midwest grandpa vibe. He hasn't been pulled in some of the national polarizing issues. A lot of his ads just talk about how he's going to lower costs on things like health care and housing.
Abby said this is going to be a possible pickup here for Republicans. Where else in governor's races across the country are we going to see the balance of power change?
Republicans' best pickup opportunity is in Kansas, where Governor Laura Kelly is term limited. So she did not get her preferred candidate last week in Ethan Corson. I think Cindy Holscher, she's slightly more progressive. I think that's a tougher hold with Holscher. Ty Masterson is the state Senate president. He was endorsed by Trump as the Republican. That's just a tough state for them to hold unless you have a candidate like Laura Kelly. But, Republicans are also trying to, they're targeting some surprising places like Oregon, perhaps, where you have Tina Kotek, even though that's a very liberal state. She has seen some tough numbers in Portland in her job approval. But it's Democrats that have some surprising races that are very competitive. Iowa could be a really big pickup opportunity. It's one of the most competitive in the country. But Rob Sand has been leading there in most polls. The state auditor, who's running just a pitch-perfect race over Zach Lane, who has been hit for his ties. He has a home in Kansas. Ohio, another potential pickup opportunity. Right now, we rate both of those as toss-ups. It's very tough to unseat an incumbent. In 2022, there was only one incumbent that lost, and that was in Nevada. So Katie Hobbs is looking better in Arizona. We moved that race most recently into lean Democrat. The open Michigan governor's seat, also now that it's a one-on-one race with Jocelyn Benson and John James, we also rate that race as lean Democrat.
Let's talk about the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. We are coming to the close of primary season for campaign 2026. How is it looking?
The one race that continues to stand out to me is Michigan. That's the complication for Democrats. The fact that they got the weaker general election candidate in Abdul al-Sayed. They need to get to 4 seats in order to flip the majority. But Michigan is a seat that they're defending. It's an open seat that they're defending. So you don't want to go backwards and need 5. Now, the good news for Democrats is that they have expanded the map. North Carolina is the #1 pickup opportunity on the map, an open seat held by the retiring Tom Tillis. Maine is looking better for Democrats than it was even a couple of months ago when it was Graham Plattner atop the ticket. He was felled by those allegations of sexual assault and stepped down. Democrats in recent days I've talked to have been feeling good about Troy Jackson, the former state Senate president that was chosen at the convention. He has some of the ideas and policies that Graham Plattner has without the baggage. Now, he's not as exciting of a speaker, but Susan Collins' numbers are just dismal in a state that Kamala Harris carried pretty easily. From there, I think it goes to Ohio, which is an 11-point Trump state, but Sherrod Brown there is running a very strong race against appointed Senator John Husted. I think Alaska is the next potential pickup opportunity with Mary Peltola running against Senator Dan Sullivan. That's a ranked choice voting state. We'll have that primary coming up later this month there. That'll give us a good first peek at their...
Next Tuesday.
Yes, at their... thank you for the... August is a little bit of a
blur.
A blur. So yes, thank you, Greta. And then, there's 2 other races that are incredibly competitive. In Iowa, Josh Turek, they feel good about that open seat race against Republican Ashley Henson. And then Texas. Again, a race, we've talked about sort of Democrats picking the more extreme candidates in some of these races. But if John Cornyn had won this primary, this is a race that Republicans are still fighting over who's going to spend to try to save Ken Paxton, that is the weaker candidate and is not raising a lot of money or campaigning that much.
Abby Turner, what about the U.S. House?
Yeah, this is, I think, where Democrats feel more bullish about flipping a chamber in Congress. Right now, Republicans are sitting about 218 seats, Democrats 212, but we aren't going to see the wave election that we've seen in recent years, even looking back to 2018, which is what Democrats compare this cycle a lot to. The battlefield is really shrinking. You're seeing that because of because partisan gerrymandering, and voters are not splitting their ballots as much. So Democrats feel good here, but on average, the party in power in the White House loses about, I want to say, like 25 seats. Democrats would be lucky if they flip 25 seats come November.
Did Democrats in the Senate have a tough map here?
They did. There's only one seat that is up that is held by, that is a Republican-held seat that voted for Kamala Harris. That's in Maine. North Carolina is a single-digit Trump state. They have a very good nominee there in Roy Cooper. But beyond that, it's all double-digit Trump states that they're having to flip. But again, Democrats with strong recruiting, they have put, and a very dismal environment where President Trump is dragging down candidates in even states that he won comfortably 2 years ago, that Democrats have a chance. I would still give Republicans a slight advantage, but Democrats have expanded the map so that the Senate is in play.
Election analysis tonight by Jessica Taylor. She's the Senate and Governor's editor with the Cook Political Report, and Abby Turner has been with us as well, the Hotline State and Governor's correspondent. Coming up here, our primary night continues. We'll keep you updated on those uncalled races in Minnesota and Wisconsin. But first, two GOP candidates, Darlene Graham and Ralph Norman, who are now headed toward a runoff 2 weeks from today to try to secure the GOP nomination to replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Their remarks from earlier this evening.
Thank you, everyone. First, I want to say that this is a very emotional night because I'm usually standing here celebrating with Lindsey. So I know he's